Well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the Inworld Review, where it is the 13th, but hopefully not Friday the 13th, of April. And we're here to bring you all the latest news about the metaverse, as described in that wonderful trailer you just saw now. We're pretty much on top of the hour this week. It's going to be an interesting show indeed. Just a quick reminder that this is brought to you live from Chilbo and in association with AVU, TV. And on to the news. Before I introduce my guests, I should say that this week's big news is principally centered on the Virtual World's Best Practices in Education, the conference for which was on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and indeed yesterday. And much of the news, especially for about high fidelity and Second Life and stuff that's come up this week, has actually come up as a result of that conference. So I'm going to leave those headlines out of my spiel until we get into the greater conversation. I just have a few interesting anecdotal things to start with. Firstly, a post courtesy of Inara Pay, but we all over the place really, is that Virtual Ability, who are a sort of I never know how politically correct way to describe, but they help blind, deaf, and other sort of slightly disabled people, underable people in virtual worlds, and especially Second Life, and have a load of facilities to help people. They are actually holding a mental health symposium that has actually been announced this week. It's going to be on Saturday, April the 28th, which I guess is probably only about a fortnight away. If you want
the 26th is the Saturday.
Oh, very good. Yeah, well, yes, it is the Saturday anyway. If you'd like some more about that, check out Inara's blog, actually, modemworld.wordpress.com. As I said, the other two are strictly anecdotal. They're really to do with the future of things. I personally, in the real world, I'm sitting here in London in the UK, and today has been the day, I don't think I was awake for it, but the London Marathon happened. This is a thing where organic athletes trail for many, many miles around London and sort of have a little race. These days, of course, it's very commercial and people come all over the world in an attempt to win it. But I saw some fascinating news yesterday, and oddly enough, it was reported from... it certainly wasn't in the UK. It was a South American blog. But apparently virtual reality opened the London Marathon to all. It was all done as an interactive 3D experience. What they did is they made high-resolution video film of the entire track, as it were, that the runners run, and they merged this into an online system where you could actually log in and run the track yourself online. And let me see, apparently 130,000 people applied in the ballot to get places, and it closed after 9 hours. This is the real race, I hasten to add. So there are only 30,000 people running. I don't know whether only is the right word. But I'm trying to... actually, no, this post is too early to have actually given figures, but the idea is a substantial number of people would have logged in online. Anyway, if you want to know more about that, just put my glasses on here to make sure I read it properly. Check out GMANETWROK. That's GMA Network, or one word.com. And look for the post from yesterday. It's fairly self-explanatory. It contains the words marathon and virtual reality. And The Scotsman, again, which is a UK paper. It's north of the border, and at present, Scotland is still part of the UK, so we won't argue about this. But they had an interesting piece in the week about virtual reality trip. A virtual reality trip will be the future of planning your holiday. And basically, they're looking at the various systems that travel agents and such will be using in the future to sort of give you a virtual taster of your holiday destination or your proposed holiday destination before you make your mind up where you really want to go. So again, the idea of using virtual reality systems and maybe Oculus helmets and whatever to experience the real world location you want to go to for your holiday. So you can read that at scotsman.com. And again, the post is a couple of days ago. You'll see it under virtual reality. So we have there's quite a little bit of news and announcements behind the scenes and up front, really, from both Ebbe Linden concerning Second Life and from Philip Rosedale concerning high fidelity and generally the future of virtual worlds. But rather than go into those posts and detail at the moment, I'm going to be opening that for conversation shortly, because this is pretty much going to be a VWP reflective reflection special. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it to Tara for any headlines she's got, and then we'll get on with the show.
Thank you, Mel. And greetings, everyone, from the Pacific Northwest, where the sun is out at the moment, as it has been the last couple of days, which is rather nice this time of year. And various critters and creatures and plant life is waking up and saying, yes, it's spring, including humanoids. Anyway, yes, obviously the VWCPE will be the big topic of conversation, and I suspect Ebbe Linden's session, which I think was a very positive for lots of folks. But before we do that, I will spend a little time on the Eat Your Vegetables segment, which got skipped last week entirely because there weren't any. Anyone who's not familiar with the Eat Your Vegetables segment, it's the segment where I indulge in a certain amount of geekiness and go through some of the highlights coming out of the lab for the week on the tech front that have implications for users. And I, as always, thank Nora Pay for her persistent and wonderful summarizing of, for example, the weekly third-party viewer meetings and catching up with various places that items get posted, including official announcements. It's kind of interesting. One of the things that I've been particularly noticing in the last couple of months since Ebbe came on board is that there's items that are getting put up in the community message boards from Linden Lab, and one of the items in here this week is from there. But anyway, to begin with, those of you who are watching this will perhaps notice the fact that my lips aren't moving, and there very well may be other people's who aren't either, and it's a reflection of the fact that Second Life Voice has decided it's not going to be very cooperative today. And apropos of that, in the world of release candidate viewers from Linden Lab, the Voice MO release candidate has been combined with let's try that one from the top. They've combined two former release candidates, the SL Voice release candidate and the Merchant Outbox release candidate, into a single one, which is now being called Voice MO release candidate, which came out this week. Both of these, the original release candidates were performing well, and it's hoped that by combining them, they'll both have an accelerated path through to formal release status. The lab is keen to see the Vivox updates for voice gain wider traction in viewers, as these not only improve people's voice experience, they also lighten the load on back-end servers, which is always a good thing. Let's see, an update on the Oculus Rift project viewer, which is currently in closed beta, is expected in the next week. Gosh, I might actually get done with my taxes and finally get that stuff plugged in. This is in the RL Sim. Anyone who's in the US of A knows tax day is Tuesday, and I'm still cranking away on getting the numbers crunched. Anyway, so there's going to be an update to the project viewer for Oculus Rift. And if you happen to be among those who have an Oculus Rift, they are still taking folks who are interested in being part of the closed beta, the only requirement being that applicants actually have the Oculus hardware. And that's in the blogs. It's SL Oculus Beta. There's underscores between SL and Oculus and Beta. lindenlab.com as the email address you send a note to, and they'll send you back the details. They further updates to the Oculus Viewer project viewer are expected, particularly once the lab receives the second round headsets, but it's still going to be a couple of months before those are out. So probably there's not going to be much change in that world for Second Life testers until the newer headsets start coming out in July, I think is when those are supposed to start shipping. Let's see, SL Share, I mentioned last week that they've added the capacities for posting pictures to Flickr and also text and images to Twitter. And the release candidate for that is likely to be available next week. So if you're really hot to have those features in SL Share, you want to get into the release candidate for that particular feature. And as everyone should know, the SL Share is entirely opt-in. They have resolved the issue that they had with Facebook for posting pictures from Second Life to the Facebook using SL Share. By the way, that's fixed. Basically, it removed the include location option in the photo upload tab. So that's wide open. So that's a good thing for those who want to share without having to have a browser and other things going outside of Second Life. Okay, big news this week in the big world of the internet has been the Heartbleed vulnerability. You've probably seen it come up in the news. It has the consensus, I would say, in the tech community is it's probably the biggest issue that's faced the internet ever, as far as a bug, a big vulnerability. I'm not sure bug is quite. It apparently was a coding issue as far as the original problem, just a flaw. And the good news from Second Life is Second Life was not vulnerable, which means they were not using the OpenSSL version. However, they are saying if you used your Second Life password elsewhere, then you would be well advised to change your Second Life password. If you've used it any place, if you've used the same password anywhere else. The rule of thumb, if you haven't been keeping up on this, is for sites that were vulnerable, if those are on your list of places that you visit, wait until you are certain that they have done the patches before you change your password. But you're going to have to spend some time changing passwords to assure your security, especially if you do any kind of financial transactions online. That's kind of the real bottom line. The one major that I noted in the list of ones that they have identified is Facebook. Facebook's been patched, so if you haven't changed your Facebook password, that's a good one to change. The thing that people who may not have paid much attention or any attention to this to be aware of is this vulnerability has been out there for about 2 years. And the bad news is there is no way to tell if somebody has taken advantage of it. So at this stage, we really don't know if any of the bad guys who look for these kinds of things found it and have been happily extracting information using it for 2 years. So that's why Heartbleed has gotten as much media attention as it has, because it is significant. The perverse good news for those of you who are into such things, the question, one of the major questions is, what is the server software running that's running the various servers that people use? And the general thing you can be aware of is if it's a Windows server, Windows does not use the OpenSSL. So in Windows servers are okay, but if it's a Unix server running something else, it's quite possible that it is an OpenSSL. Great fun. The other big one that I'm aware of is Akamai, which is used for web acceleration by lots of companies. It got patched very quickly, but it's still that's from the point at which we knew. So anyway, Second Life is good, but as I say, the takeaway on all this from Second Life in particular is if you use the same password for Second Life that you use elsewhere, change your Second Life password. Okay, Mal mentioned virtual ability, so I'm not going to talk about that one. Let's see. Linden Lab giveth and Linden Lab taketh away. They attempted to roll out some changes in how your transaction records accessible from the web are available, those web pages. That were aimed at improving those tools, but unfortunately, one of the changes they made that caused a great deal of reaction on the part of merchants and people who checked that. The net result was they rolled them back. They said, oops, and they're back to the drawing boards and accepting feedback to review and update. So watch this space for more on that one. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about that isn't Ebbe specific? Oh, the other thing that came out this week from the lab is around this whole subject of avatars, shapes, and construction, and labeling, and clothing labeling, because of the fact that the lab has rolled out its answer to mesh clothing sizing, and so what they've come up with is 3 labels, what they're calling classic, which are avatars based on original default Second Life avatar, standard mesh, which would be an avatar that is using mesh. It's still based on the classic avatar, and then we have custom or branded avatars, which may deviate significantly from standard mesh avatars. And related to those are clothing labels for all of those, and they've come up with some graphics for a couple of these, and they're encouraging clothing makers to add these graphics to their clothes, so whether they're classic or whether they're mesh, and whether they're anyway, whether it clarifies or makes things even muddier remains to be seen. My first reaction is to kind of get a little cross-eyed and say, okay, well, if I'm still using a classic avatar, so at least I know that much. But be aware that you may start seeing some logos appearing on pictures for attire. And if this is of great interest to you, the knowledge base has an article in the official information sources at the lab. So the new definitions do appear to perhaps be confusing. So
don't they know why they don't just stick to good old text tags, to distinguish them?
Well, you have, Mal, if people do pictures of their clothes. For marketing and display in stores and all that kind of stuff, and that's where they're saying add these logos to that kind of advertising, and then the particular terms that they're suggesting that are asking creators to define their clothing as one of 4 types in order to indicate which categories of avatar they're most likely to be compatible with. It's that business of mesh clothing and having to use transparent bits so that bits of your avatar don't poke out funny.
Yeah, usual story. Okay.
Anyway, okay, and that's enough for me, and I'm going to toss it back to Mal and open things up.
Okay, great. I'll just mention 2 things, incidentally, before we move on, referring to what Tara said. I did that, basically, the Firestorm viewer announced that many of their older versions were being blocked as of Thursday. My old beta doesn't seem to be, because I'm in it now. But I did download the new Firestorm, and I suspect I'll have to redo it with a clean install, because I found performance and crashiness very buggy. But what was interesting is that I noticed that amongst the, you have in preferences, I think, for toolbar buttons, And most of these are nice little icons, for the map and for zooming in and for chat and AOs and stuff like that. Well, amongst the new buttons is a button with the Facebook logo. And I really thought, I am not going to have that logo cluttering up my toolbar.
That's probably SL Share.
Yeah, exactly. So it would seem all that stuff is in the new Firestorm, along with materials, and basically, I think it's caught up with everything, but it doesn't seem to be functioning without a complete reinstall for me. But interestingly, of course, I think we may have mentioned this last week, because the Firestorm crew posted what everybody thought was an April Fool's joke on their site about tear-off menus. And I have the video to prove otherwise, although I haven't been able to upload it for today's show. But frankly, there is another beta of Firestorm that's been released, which allows you to size your Second Life windows you might any other program on your desktop rather than having the full screen. And you can then drag things like your inventory window and stuff like that out of the screen area. So they become separate floating tabs. They tend to resolve on screen a bit slower. It's probably some sort of trickery, that's being used. But basically, they found a way of being able to drag your tabs out of the window. And I suspect for various things that could be very useful. For example, if you want a clean Second Life window to make a film on, but you do want to actually have an inventory open or something, you can drag it out of the screen area and keep it at the side of the visible area you're filming or whatever. And I'm sure filming is not the only thing that will take advantage of that. So I saw a film demonstrating it. It clearly works. It is a beta version at the moment, but I think they're onto a good thing there. Anyway, now it's time. I'm going to throw over to our wonderful other new co-host here now for her news of the week, and it's Maria. It's Maria Korolov, and again, I would suggest we avoid stuff to do with VWCPE until we actually get into the conversation, because we've got an awful lot coming up there. So,
okay, that was my big news for the week. Now, another thing is, and I'm trying this out. I don't know if it'll catch on at all, but I'm changing my name to Meta Maria. What do you think?
Meta Maria.
I know. It's the song. It's the metaverse.
Yeah, there is an old British puppet TV show made by the Thunderbirds people. It was about an underworld. I can't remember it now, but it was an underworld, vessel, and there was a mermaidy type character in it called Aquamarina.
Okay,
or something, and there was a whole theme song she had with it, and it was Aqua Marina, and I suddenly thought of it. I can go, Meta Maria.
Well, sorry. I was thinking of the West Side Story song. I once met a girl named Maria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was what came to my mind right away. Right. Was Maria from West Side Story.
Right. So, which is better than How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria, which is the other song that people normally sing to me. And the reason is because I want to make this metaverse thing into something real, and I want to have a real brand to go with it. And nobody can pronounce my last name or spell it, including the Russians, where the name originally came from, because it's been modified too much. So it's this neither fish nor fowl kind of thing. So and as the first kind of tryout of this new name, this evening, all going well, I am putting out a report called Free Land in OpenSim. So this is the big announcement of it, and this is. And I talked to a whole bunch of grid owners about what free land offers that they have. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff where you can go and you can get free land. Anything from small little residential plots to entire grids. I mean, there's organizations out there that will give you like a whole free large hosted grid. If you're a category person. So all the details are going to be in this report, which is going to be coming out in to celebrate my new website redesign on Hypergrid Business. So I am pulling up the report now to give you an idea of what kind of offers we're talking about. And one of the things I specifically excluded was any limited time offers. Because anybody can give you a free plot for a month, you know? I mean, who really wants that, you know? It's just like a sales offer, right? It doesn't really matter. So what I have is, let's see, how many pages do I have here? View.
I actually logged into our Grid the other day for our filming ops, and I found my studio had disappeared because it was one of those, 3 months or something. Hadn't used it much.
All right, so I have 23 different offers here from grids. And the biggest one is the offer from the Moses group. And that is the military, the U.S. government-sponsored grid. And if you're part of kind of their project and they're supporting virtual world research and development, and they are providing free grids and regions for educators, nonprofits, and businesses. So this isn't for individual residences or for commercial projects, but if you're doing something that's kind of an R&D and development side, and you don't mind being funded by the U.S. military, then that would be a good deal for you. Another really good deal is there's a grid called PM Grid, which is a wonderful little creative grid that not too many people know about. It's hypergrid enabled. It's a non-commercial grid. And their thing is to help people, especially help creators get into OpenSim. And they'll give you anything from a parcel to an entire region, or even more, for people who want to do creative things in OpenSim. And it's unlimited duration, unlimited prims, and they also have a web interface, so you can download these regions at any time and move them anywhere else you want to. So this is kind of a jumping off point. They're not the most high capacity grid, so you're not going to get a lot of people on there. This isn't one of those big commercial grids with thousands of users. So this is a small creative grid. But if you're looking for a place to build that's hypergrid enabled, so anybody from the hypergrid can teleport in and see your project, you've got that. But I've also got offers on commercial grids as well that do have people. Third Rock Grid offers unlimited use parcels as long as you're actively using it. You can keep your parcel. There's Avenation has free brownstone houses, unlimited use. So you get a nice 3-story house in one of their city regions. Avi Worlds is giving away quarter regions. As long as you're active, you can have an entire quarter region. Now, Avi Worlds is, as I keep saying in print, a troubled grid, and they keep getting upset every time I say this. But this grid has changed its business models as often as I change clothes in Second Life. Which is to say rarely, but still often enough to make people worried. They've closed down a few times and reopened again, and they've changed their operating structure, and they keep turning hypergrid on and off. They can't decide which way they're going to go. But right now, if you're looking for this, they're a closed grid, they're a commercial grid, and it's a quarter region. It's one of the bigger land offers for free stuff. The Craft Grid, which is one of the really big popular nonprofit grids, is offering little islands, and it's really popular with creative grids, folks and artists. And you get a little mini island, not a whole region, and it's 800 grids, 800 prims. So we got tons of those things, and that's going to be coming out tonight, and anybody could get it.
Right.
Yeah.
this is it, of course. If you're hypergrid enabled, it doesn't really matter where you take up the offer from as well.
Exactly. Now, I didn't list Kitely in it because although Kitely does offer a free region with 100,000 prims, you can only get to that region if you have some kind of Kitely time. So, for example, premium users who have unlimited access to pretty much anything that is available on Kitely will be able to enter your region. But after your initial hours are up, you can't go into your own free region unless you pay a la carte for some hours or something. And then the prices are really low. So it's kind of a free region because other people can access it. And so you have it up there. But you yourself can't access it. So, okay, that's really complicated and really confusing. I'll leave it out. But I am putting it out there for people listening right now that is an option. If you want a free region that anybody else can access except for you, that's a possibility there.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you just got time to build it and then leave it there, fair enough.
Well, yeah. You can, for example, if you're a museum, say, right, and you can build it on your own computer, you can upload it, and then have it up there for anybody to visit for eternity without having to pay a thing. So that actually that is a decent way to do it. And or for example, you could have stores. You can just upload the ore. You can build it anywhere. Kitely is really good with uploads and downloads of entire regions. You can just upload it up and have it open to all the premium members of Kitely who have paid for their own unlimited access, and you can just sell stuff and just sit back and let the money flow in. I don't know how much money is going to flow in, but it doesn't cost you anything, so why not?
Yeah. Well, I like what you said about the museum and things because people are always going on about not being able to afford Sims and how do we archive these wonderful installations from the web.
Yeah.
So I mean, if Kitely can scale and still handle that, the perfect way to preserve archives.
And for them, I think for them, especially for things like museums and creative builds, this is a great thing for them because it will attract users to their grid and inspire people to upgrade to premium memberships. And it doesn't cost them anything. If you put something up on Kitely that nobody visits, it's just going to sit in storage and never be activated. So all they're paying for the storage costs for this region, which are pretty limited. The storage costs are dropping so fast, so quickly. All these platforms are giving away pretty much storage for free. And the way they explain it is that it's cheaper to give away storage than to pay for advertising and marketing. That is just storage is just so cheap. And so for Kitely offering one free region per user, so you have to be a registered user, so you have to create a new account for each new region, and eventually, I guess they might catch on if you're creating 100 different accounts. So you do that, and you get this free region, and you can store your stuff on it so that it doesn't go away if you have an interesting build. And as long as Kitely is around, you've got it. And you can also save a local copy of it so that so just in case you have it, or you could put it up on a website. I've seen people do this if they have a nice build that they want to share with the public, and they have the legal rights to do so. You can take the OR file, post it up on a website for anyone to download. And there's a few people doing that as well. And I really encourage people to do that because it'll help ensure that it survives, that there's multiple copies of it floating around in the universe and people are using it and appreciating it.
Great. That did come up at the conference, actually, on a couple of
it did come up. Yes.
How many free places there are to get, share AR files and other stuff.
Mm-hmm. So let's see what else. What else is new? Was new this week. So the VWCPE was the big stuff. What else? Moses, the folks at Moses released their new. Speaking of the military, their new Moses in a box system. So if you're a big enterprise user or a school or a company and you're looking for a really kind of high-end way to run a large grid, right now you have to do a lot of coding yourself. So most of these commercial grids are doing a lot of back-end stuff. So Moses has all this stuff already. Like, for example, if you want to add 100 users at once, that kind of stuff, right? People generally write their own custom code to do that. Well, Moses has a lot of that kind of management functionality built right in. And it's government licensed, so not government licensed, it's Creative Commons licensed. So it's available for anyone to use. And you can just download it and run it. And they're distributing it to all the other federal agencies. And that's why they created in the first place, because other federal agencies were asking for a version of the Moses grid. So so OpenSim is spreading throughout the world's governments. That's pretty cool. And it's not just for Americans, and anybody can download it. They're pretty open to it.
I know there's a lot of educational projects and things in the UK here, who rely solely on OpenSim, for example. So yes, I mean it's these what was it you called it a few weeks ago, the dark metaverse or something. It's actually all these under the radar operations that they're, because of what they are, they're not publicly visible, but there's a huge take up of OpenSim on that level. Exactly. Which we don't always realize.
No, people don't want to talk about it. It's embarrassing to say to admit to the public that you're spending money on these virtual worlds because everybody thinks it's a game. And if it's particularly useful to you, this is a really cutting edge thing. You don't want your competitors to know you're doing it. So for companies using it for simulations and rapid prototyping internally, they may not want the news to get out because their competitors are still doing it with paper models or with CAD/CAM systems, and those are things that are super expensive and difficult to take a long time. And if you're doing it with OpenSim, you can do it really quickly and easily without a lot of training, without having to hire 3D professional modelers to do it. So it's a competitive advantage.
And they certainly don't want hypergrid enabled, but that's another story.
Yeah, that's another story, and they may well be hypergrid enabled and just allow hypergrids to each other. There's ways to set up a filtered hypergrid, so that
you can always have a research station and just as a collection of sims, and you can just hypergrid enable one of them as a showroom. For example, can't you?
You could do that too, or you can also, since hypergrid supports groups, you can have a group of hypergrid people who are allowed access to your grid, and nobody else can hypergrid in.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I'm doing that now with Hyperica. We've started rebuilding. Me and Mary Schoenbach, who runs Virtual World Gypsy. It's a virtual world consulting company and building company. And she and I have been going through Hyperica, fixing our scripts and planning a redesign of the ports. And one of the things that we're doing is we set up a building group, in which we have access to build on the region, and nobody else does for the rebuild test region. And she's in a group, and I'm in a group, and her avatars are all hypergrid from a couple different grids. And she can still do the work. So that's a pretty cool thing. And I think more hypergrid-enabled grids should realize that this is an option and take advantage of it.
I did. You've reminded me. I might as well interject with this. I haven't got the link handy. It's not in my posts that I have visible. It was probably on Twitter I put it. But there was a blog in the week about a grid, basically appealing for stuff actually that was opening, and it's kind of designed like an airport where it's solely devoted so you can go land there and teleport to other regions. Which I don't have the details. But
I think that was me.
Oh, okay, right. Well, that's Hyperia, isn't it?
That's Hyperica, yeah. Hyperica is a tiny little grid. We had 3 hyperport regions that we're now replacing with 1, because it used to be in the battle days that there were distance limits on how far you could teleport. So they fixed
Yeah.
that. Thank God. So I don't need to have 3 different hyperports. And I had this really convoluted system where if you want to go from one edge of the metaverse to the opposite edge of the metaverse, and you're standing in one place and your destination's over there, my system would automatically take you through 3 different landing points and onto your final destination without you having to do anything. And this involved like a nightmare coordination between these referral stations in the middle, and the scripting was just atrocious, and the scripts always broke. And now we're throwing it all out and starting with something new and easy because we don't have to coordinate all this. And so we're keeping the old regions up for people who have grids that haven't upgraded yet. But our grid is fully upgraded. So what it does is if you land on any of our old teleport regions, they're now empty. It will just forward you over to our central hyperport that we're now gonna just redesign from scratch. And the first thing that I'm doing this week is getting rid of all our broken gates and putting up new ones. So, and hopefully that will help spur a little bit more of kind of the casual travel through the hypergrid, because it's much easier to travel the hypergrid if all you have to do is walk through a gate than if you have to like look up the address and figure out how to use the map. You know, a lot of people have never hypergridded because they can't figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, unless you actually have the link right handy, it's very complicated. You know, typing in the grid name, then the location and everything else, and looking it up. But that's great. That's absolutely great. Yeah, one-stop teleporting throughout the entire metaverse. Is that it on that front? Anything else major new on OpenSim? Or should we move into discussion of education now?
I guess the only new thing is that they're getting ready for the next major release of OpenSim 0.8, and that should be coming out in a couple months. And they're kind of freezing development of new features for a little bit to get ready for that, so that they're not adding new stuff while they're trying to work out all the bugs and get things tested and for the new major release. So that's something to watch out for. It'll be a nice new update with the new security features and the new hypergrid delivery, bug fixes. So if you go shopping with Kitely, it's going to become even easier and smoother, and it's going to be a nice new release. I'm looking forward to it.
Great, absolutely great. Okay, well, let me move on and introduce our other guests, and we'll start focusing on what is news as well, of course, but Virtual World's best practices in education, which took place in the week. I'm joined by a very familiar face here, Phelan Corrimal. Hi, Phelan.
Good afternoon.
And we're also joined by actually an old face, really. He's a friend of the channel from back in the days when we did webcam broadcasts. Who's also involved with VWCPE as an executive. It's Dirk McKeenan. Hi, Dirk.
Well, hello there.
And yes, well, I think the best place to start is while we're on the news. We'll go into all the greater things that happened over the course of the conference in a bit. Maria, you, of course, were one of the keynote speakers as well.
Yes, I was.
I know from your reporting you've been keeping an eye on the whole conference, so you're probably great for a sort of summary of the important bits we had. Dirk, of course, you were privileged last night to hand out the first of the, I guess it's the Lifetime Achievement Award. It's called the Thinker Award now, isn't it? And it went to Thinker Melville, who really deserved it, I do believe. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And we have a copy of it right here off to the side of the stage.
I was hoping you'd mention that. Petlove may turn the camera around so we can see the. I don't seem to have a feed in the studio, which is a bit weird. Yes, we can see.
Yes, and the tree's not part of it.
There we are. Right, I'm seeing it now. Yeah, nice. It's big. as well. When you said, can we show the award, I thought it was going to be I suppose it's sizable, but I thought it was going to be a little thing you probably
to
did.
be fair,
I've been told, Phelan told me, actually I think Phelan was about to say it. Go ahead.
I mean, to be fair, this is actually not the actual award. The actual award is going to be given to Thinker in a couple of weeks. We're just in the process of getting it made up, but the intention is that we will be presenting a physical award and a certificate to recipients of this award going forward. So Thinker has already given us his blessing to use his name for the award going forward, and I think what you'll find is probably in about 3 to 4 months that we're going to start putting information out there, looking for asking the community for candidates as to those people that should be put forward as a potential recipient of this award going forward.
And just for reference, this is an artist's rendering of it. We put it that way because the physical thing actually, I think, is a bit smoother, and it is a real life physical award. And so this was the artist rendering so that we could present something to him in World.
Great. Well, it's very well deserved. He's been on the show in the past and everything. Wonderful guy, and as you pointed out, so invaluable to the Metaverse and Second Life as a whole in all the many things he does and sponsors. So a better person could not have an award named after him, let alone receive it for the first time. So,
well, the testimonials were pretty amazing. I mean, I got to read them. I didn't. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to work with him a lot, but I got to read some of the testimonials, and it's just phenomenal. Some of the things that he's done, the people that he's helped.
Yeah. Well, he's highly. I find a lot of people I know were, in fact, I think whether this avatar or my spare one, still a member of the Hobo group, for example. And, you don't think of a Thinker there, but, because it's just a group for people that haven't got land and places to live, but are getting involved and stuff. And, of course, that's just one of many things that he's always been highly involved with. It's a sort of strand of community and group that just doesn't have a parallel. There's lots of special interest communities, but this is just one for people who hang out, and have nowhere to go. So and that, it certainly existed when I joined Second Life in 2006 or something. I don't know how old it is, but I keep thinking, it's the first group of Second Life almost. So wonderful stuff there. Let's move on then to the crucial parts of the conference. It was quite a coup, I think, getting both Philip Rosedale, the founder of Second Life, to come and talk about the future and his high fidelity project that we go into quite a lot, and Ebbe Linden, of course, the new CEO at the lab, who did. I thought he did a phenomenal job by sort of coming on stage, and within 5 minutes he'd addressed probably every major question that might have been put to him. Sort of he was clearly in touch with all the issues that were concerned and addressing them as best he could. And that was wonderful. We didn't have to wait for questions to see the guy responding to user concerns and of a whole variety. So I was very impressed there. I also, partly to do with the Silicon Valley demo he gave the other week, which we showed last week, I think it was, and what we know of high fidelity. I realized that hearing him talk that there was actually an uncanny commonality with OpenSim. He's obviously approaching it from a whole different sort of networking and platform kind of perspective, but he seems to share this vision that everything should be able to transport everywhere, the sort of ethic of the hypergrid, if you like. So I thought there were some fascinating points raised there. Maybe I will come back to you, Maria, because you were there, and as well as giving your keynote, you've been following it as a journalist, haven't you? So what would you consider the highlights to have been?
So For me, the two big things were Rosedale saying that open standards in connectivity, like the OpenSIM style hypergrid, is going to be important for the metaverse. I like the fact that he mentioned OpenSIM. That was really nice because I'm a big fan of OpenSIM.
Yeah.
So
Wouldn't have guessed.
you wouldn't have guessed. I keep it to myself. Yeah. So I thought that was really impressive. I really liked what he had to say about the fact that we don't really have a user interface that fits the 3D world. And it reminded me of the ways where when we first started trying to put graphics on a screen, we had the ASCII graphics, we were using the arrow keys to move around. And then digital graphics monitors came out, and the mouse came out, and the Windows metaphor came out from Apple and from Microsoft. And all of a sudden, this 2D graphical thing became actually usable, and it started to take off. And so what he was saying was that the current system we have with the mouse, the keyboard combination, is with the piano chords that you have to do in order to move your viewpoint around or in order to build. This is a tricky thing to learn, and it's not intuitive. Like the mouse is intuitive for a 2D space, or a touch tablet is so intuitive a grandmother or a baby or a cat can use it. It is so easy. And so right now we don't have that system for 3D worlds. And he talked at length about this, how the Oculus Rift finally gives you some of this because you could turn your head and you're looking in different directions. You don't have to hit like 5 keys at once to look somewhere you want to look. You just turn your head. That's a very intuitive thing. And so but we need more than that. And he talked about puppeteering and how we can get our arm gestures and our facial gestures into the world without having to have a gesture HUD or a facial expression, scripts that we use or, animations. All this complicated stuff right now we have to do in order to make our avatars do what we want them to do. This should all be easy and intuitive and simple. And the hardware, there's pieces of it around. There's the Kinect. There's the Hydra Razor that he talked about that they're using for high fidelity right now. There's different kind of devices you can put on, rings and body suits and things like that can capture your motion, and cameras that can look at your face and capture expressions. But these are all like bits and pieces that aren't really hooked together yet, and nothing really has come out the winner the way the mouse came out the winner, and now the touch tablets, the touch screens have come out the winner. So once that shakes out, and it might take a while for it to shake out as people try different things, and none of these things are in big, widespread commercial use yet, so it's super early. But once those things shake out, and virtual worlds become as easy to use as a touch tablet, I mean, imagine the repercussions of it there. All these things that are now borderline use case for virtual worlds, because yes, you get all these benefits, but it's so hard to get people in and trained if they've never been here before that we might as well just do it on the web or Skype or something. All those things will become possible because it'll become easier to use. So I thought that was a very, very nice insight there from him, and and it was interesting that he addressed that.
Right, while we're on Philip's speech, then let's bring Dirk and Phelan in. I'll start with Dirk, if I may. Your impressions on Philip's speech in particular, Dirk.
Well, I thought it was interesting. He's very the thought that came to mind seems like it might sound a little derisive, but it's not. It's and kind of comparing him to Ebbe. Philip's speech was very head in the clouds, very looking to see where we can go, and kind of giving us a place to follow him and his ideas. Where Ebbe was very much with his feet on the sim, where he's trying to get back to the realities that we have to deal with in day-to-day life. So I'll leave Ebbe for later, but his is talking about like peer sharing networks. I've heard a couple of different reactions to the SETI at home reference, where you have servers all over the place that start sharing, peer sharing servers, and it'll be interesting if we can get there, if we can get to offloading things to nearby hardware. It's a ways in the future, but it's a good time to start thinking about it.
Right. I don't think that SETI is the best example of that. Something like Skype would be a better example. That with SETI, you actually have to think about, I'm donating time to this project. With Skype, you're just using Skype. And while you're using it, it so happens that you're also helping the network as a whole.
I think with high fidelity, that's the idea. You know, the alpha testing, you log in and you use it, and you just do them a favor by keeping it logged in overnight, so the the peer-to-peer aspect of it can keep working.
Well, I did find it interesting that he specifically mentioned the SETI project.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
It was funny because I think I made a joke about it in text on your show, Mel, saying something about, oh, well, it's SETI at home.
Yes. Yeah, I was busy trying to follow a lot of the text there while it was going on, but yes, indeed. Yeah, I did read a couple of. I personally felt they were quite insulting in a way, but or one in particular blog in the week that said, something like Philip always the dreamer, and it just made me think, well, all these things come out of our dreams. I mean, Philip is a highly qualified physicist. And he is a dreamer, but also, he tries to make a reality out of his dreams. So it's very serious.
He also made this world that we're broadcasting from
right now. Yeah.
And wasn't that a dream?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a dream, and I think somebody who has the skills and the expertise to make dreams come true, just like a lot of our tech toys today are dreamt up by Star Trek and, science fiction authors. Mm-hmm. There's a progress thing there, but it starts with the dream, it starts with the imagination, and then thinking beyond that. And I think Philip's onto a very good thing, to be honest.
Well, you can take it back to, like, in automotive design. I think there was a point where we had, and this is going too deep into the metal, but there was a point when we had a certain design of an engine and nothing larger was feasible. And I don't know if it was Ford that turned to his engineers and said, okay, build this. And there was no technology available right then to build that. He just said, do it. And that's how we ended up with the V8 eventually. Without saying, do something that we can't currently do, it's not going to happen. Philip's got his head in the clouds, but that's not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah. Phelan, your impressions of Philip? You and I, of course, talked a bit offline with him, but generally speaking, you're feeling about that presentation?
I'm not really sure. I mean, there's a lot of interesting concepts in terms of what he's got there. If you take the pure concept of the cloud, then what you're really looking at is you're looking at situations where it doesn't really matter where the data resides, because the data resides, for all intents and purposes, holistically across the network. It doesn't matter where the CPU resides, because it resides holistically across the network. So to make a lot of these particular things work, if you're going to do it in the very purest sense, where you're going to get your latency numbers down to under 100 milliseconds, which seems to be that magic number that he's very much focused on, then the only way that you're going to be able to do that is if you turn everybody's computer, laptop, and cell phone and tablet into a portion of the network, which raises significant privacy and security concerns across everybody's devices. It's not, so to me, it's not a question. If you assume everybody's going to play nicely in the sandbox and nobody is out there to take advantage of everybody else, and everybody is going to play fair, right?
Yeah.
Which of course we know will always be the case. Then essentially, in order to make this work, what they would essentially have to do is everybody that subscribes to this particular service would then have to be in agreement to donate a certain percentage of their downtime processing power in order to be called on demand. I mean, you were talking a little bit about Skype. Well, Skype is peer-to-peer. Skype is a group of people that are basically saying, yeah, I mean, we'll exchange information between ourselves. It's not really the cloud, right? It is different computers talking to one another. And even if you look at the SETI system is a group of people that are saying, I will allow you to download very specific packages of information, download them to my computer, and when I'm asleep at night, my computer will be up and running and doing these things for you and upload the results in the morning. But I think where they need to go with this is really, in a sense, turning everybody's devices. What's the guy's name? Kevin Kelly, right? That was talking about the Internet of Things, right? Well, you're essentially talking about that particular concept where everybody's device is essentially part of the network. Now, from a security, from a privacy standpoint, do you really want your mobile device and your tablet to be part of the network, to be called upon at any given point in time? If your cell phone happens to be the closest device to where somebody is requesting access for processing power, all of a sudden your device, because you've accepted the service, will turn on and start chugging away.
I'm not following you. I mean, I use Skype. All of us here are using Skype. That's an example of a peer-to-peer system that is a combination of using everybody's distributed processing and some cloud infrastructure.
It's very specific infrastructure. It's using my computer, your computer, Dirk's computer.
Right, but I can turn off Skype anytime. I don't have to have it running in the background. It never interferes with me. Everything's encrypted, so there's no privacy issues. I can't listen in on other people's conversations that happen over my computer. In fact, I'm unaware of it.
But we're not using Skype is not using your computer to process my conversation for someone that you're not talking to. So, for instance, SETI at home, what they're doing is they're chopping off a chunk of satellite data, sending it to your computer, farming it out for processing. And so the remote processing is not benefiting you in any way, shape, or form. And
so like a BitTorrent might, for example, be a better example because they're using...
Probably, yes. BitTorrent might be a much better example. Right. You think so, Phelan?
It a little bit closer, yeah, because I mean, in that particular case, what you've got is a group of people that have basically said, look, I have the full file that somebody's looking for, and so in order to help stream that particular information, I'll take the following blocks from this person, blocks from that person, blocks from the next person, and allow those to download. If you turn your computer off, all of a sudden those blocks that your computer was trying to download as part of the BitTorrent, all of a sudden those no longer become available. So now the BitTorrent software has to switch to another computer in order to find that. Those
and
blocks.
they would just reroute around it. Yeah,
they would reroute exactly right. But I mean, in this particular case, I mean, now you're talking not just in terms about streaming data, but you're also talking about processing power. So if I'm trying to render, let's say, 24 avatars on my screen, and there are, say, 50 people in the local neighborhood here who have all subscribed to, let's say, this same high fidelity service or whatever it is that we want to call it, then what I think they need to do in order to make this really workable is to basically say, okay, we already know that Kevin's computer isn't powerful enough to process all of this stuff, but if I tap into maybe 20 of these 50 computers that are in the local neighborhood, then all of a sudden I've got enough processing power in order to do the type of thing that I want, and I can keep the latency down because I know the speed of light distance between myself and my neighbor is but that's a real physical limitation, right? The speed of light distance between me and my neighbor is inconsequential. The latency will definitely be under, probably something like 20 milliseconds. So now all of a sudden, you're really this is where you're really talking about using the cloud to its maximum potential.
I had the impression from what Philip was talking about, and I'm out of my depth here on a lot of this technical stuff, but it did seem to me that he was talking about both cloud and peer-to-peer. In other words, it wasn't a simple matter of one or the other. It's a way of combining these different systems as different parts of the platform, the network, if you like. And it occurs to me that, I mean, we go into this, it comes up all the while. Something like Facebook, forgetting Twitter and a lot of the others, and Google particularly. I've got a couple of workstations here. I've got a laptop that's on sometimes. I've got a web connection on some of the TV boxes, and there's the Android pad, and there's the iPod and the iPad, and I'm getting duplicity from these half the time because they're sending notifications and pinging the servers to check what's there. And so until I actually switch off all these devices, and believe me, I never, a couple of mine they're always running anyway. I'd be quite happy if there's somebody I approve of, using my space overnight. Security, I definitely agree, is an issue. But it seems to me that we're entering a world where the Facebooks and Twitters and Googles are always pinging back and forth anyway, and we've always got some device on. So I don't think it's that big a step to imagine that this is going to increase. I think regarding the future of all these networks, I think is how much are we going to use them. The Internet of Things is coming along, but I think the way Facebook's used and things is in decline because, we've had it for a few years and it's overload.
Well, one of the things you pointed out, Mal, talking about both the cloud and the peer sharing, is that there's a very good model for both of those. In that, for the cloud stuff, like if you look at the couches, the the furniture we're sitting on, that would be stored in the cloud because it needs no calculation when you're rendering it. It's a fixed thing. But as we move our arms back and forth, that's a local calculation, right. And if it's happening on a nearby server, then we can share the load back and forth as far as who's calculating what. And it's a much more sequential thing than grabbing parts. You can grab the arm of the chair and the leg of the chair in any order, but as you're moving your arm across from one side of your body to the other, that needs to happen in a sequential order, and that's coming off of the calculation engine.
One thing that bothers me about Rosedale's speech in this regard is that he was giving some numbers about how many servers there are and how much capacity there is in the world, and that it isn't enough to do the kind of thing we're looking at doing. And he seemed to be totally ignoring the fact that we have Moore's Law. Our capacity is going to double in a year and a half, and then double again a year and a half after that, and double again a year and a half after that.
Well, that's not completely true, though.
Well, whatever the latest Moore's Law progression is. So as we speak, all these big providers are upgrading the servers. And if we have virtual reality coming into popular use, we're going to have a generation of people finally getting around to upgrading their computers. I mean, the computers that we have now that we're using for web surfing, watching videos, playing games, and doing Skype, they're good enough right now. People don't need to upgrade. They can even use tablets and phones to do this. If we get virtual reality and we suddenly have a reason for higher speed computers, this is why Intel is investing so much in this, is that people will be motivated to finally get rid of the old desktops and their old laptops and upgrade to something faster. So and that will happen. So we're going to have faster computers locally. We're going to have faster servers up in the cloud with all these service providers. Eventually, we're going to get faster bandwidth. Even if Comcast doesn't step up, Google's rolling out Google Fiber in one town at a time with 1 gigabit Ethernet. So this is going to happen. By the time the hardware is there, by the time High Fidelity or the other software companies working on this have actual products in the marketplace, by the time we're getting to the point where adoption is big enough that scalability are becoming issues, we're also going to have more capacity, more bandwidth. And
this is quite pertinent because it wasn't the keynote; it was ages ago. But Philip, we know that Philip actually wanted to bring Second Life live 5 years before he did, but it had to be held back because at that point the capacity for handling it wasn't there. When it finally did come online, it was, ASDL broadband was around, but the fiber links weren't there. But, there was a time when it was feasible to do it, and that's when he finally did it. And we've only got to look back 10, 11 years since the birth of Second Life to realize that, it's still wonderful, but things have moved on. The capacity for doing all this stuff is very, very different now. I think is really a key to things. I look at the way people bring the web and apps and things into television screens. It all seems to be very short term. What can be done now? And yes, we can do it now. But people like Philip are needed there because they're the long term thinkers. They do think down the line. Philip's quite prepared to invest his time and energy in something that may not be fully realized for quite a few years, and may need to progress even from a beta. But also we have an audience demographic that is changing. I mean, without going into details, my generation is probably the first where video games and virtuality were present. I don't know, back in the 70s or something like that. But increasingly, scale down the line about another 20 years or so, everybody alive will have been of a generation where the idea of gaming, if you like, will probably be ingrained in their heads. Now, I'm not saying the teenagers who grow up to be about, 17, 18, they want to be out in the real world, falling in love and all that entails, and partying and whatever. There's always going to be a generation, where I've got bored with my games now and I'm going to do something else. But then, in those lives, take another decade away or something, they will have the skills and the understanding of what from gaming experience particularly, but they will know what virtual worlds are all about instinctively. They may not know the minuity of collective creation or something like that. Their mind may be in games, but they won't be scared of the concept of virtual worlds. And gradually they will also have adopted these new, serious gamers will have adopted Oculus type things. Other people will simply have adopted little virtual environments on mobiles or something. But down the line the demographic will change too, as well as the capacity of the technology and the technology itself. So, this long-term thinking, I think, is absolutely crucial. I really get fed up when I just see companies see something new like Oculus. They're all jumping in after the Facebook takeover. We can use it for this and this and this, and because they think, it's just it's just a bit away now, we can jump into this. But they're not. They're exploiting something that's being built or is about to be built. They're not thinking really long term, and I think I think Philip is imagining the world in 20 years and seeing what can I build for this.
And if I might,
yes, indeed, yeah.
Just a couple of thoughts, and I would spin off from NRP's comments about Philip's presentation and the degree to which Philip leans on the tech and does not address the social aspects, the psychological aspects. And obviously that's not his bailiwick, but the question is not is the technology available, but will people use it? Will people adopt to it? If we look at where we are right now and how much mobile has taken over, obviously, if you're talking mobile, you're talking walking down the street, driving in your car, moving around in various ways. Well, as soon as you start talking virtual reality, you're talking park your posterior on a chair or a couch stuff. It's not the sort of thing you can do behind the wheel of a car. It's not the sort of thing you can do walking down the aisle in the grocery store. And I'm not talking augmented reality where, your device, I can easily see a day in a grocery store, where a grocery store, you can scan items on the shelf and get a lot of information that right now you have to pick up the physical object to read. But there's the whole social side of it, which is a very qualitatively different sort of world than the highly mobile world we currently inhabit. And how do you get from point A to point B? I think is a question that is not getting enough attention as far as the I'm a firm believer that I think virtual reality has incredible potential for a whole lot of things. But how do you bridge from that whole mobility and what our physical selves are involved with and will persist in being involved with, and the physical realities that being in a virtual environment require?
Well, aren't you just getting into augmented reality now?
No, I'm talking about virtual reality. I'm talking about if it's the business is sitting down with something, whatever the equivalent in 5 or 10 years time is to an Oculus Rift plus a bodysuit, just to and let's say latency is no longer an issue, then you still have the issues of if you're immersed in a virtual environment, you cannot also be immersed in a physical space in the same way. In other words, you can't drive. You certainly can't drive a car. Think of all the things that your physical senses have to be tuning into. I have very serious doubts that we can push our physical perceptions far enough to be able to be in a virtual environment at the same time we are actively doing things in the physical environment.
I think this is rather like, people who go out to the workplace. It's great we have virtual workplaces too, but go out to the workplace. They come home at the day, they concentrate on driving their car home, maybe, and then they sit in front of the television. They are adapting to their environment. And to me, mobile tech is a link in the chain, that you have this nice, small, compact stuff you can go mobile with. You could have an instant messenger opening and be talking to all your avatar friends, but that doesn't mean going into the virtual world, but you may do that when you get home. You may be able to do it via television. The thing that worries me more, but I think it is changing, is that the increase in mobile tech, and I don't just mean the new wearable stuff, I mean, mobile phones, the smartphones, and is that people have been getting sidetracked by this short attention span thing of just ping here, ping there, ping everywhere. But there are signs, that you can't learn that way. I mean, I behave that way sometimes when I'm scanning the news. I literally scan it, but then I pause at the thing I want to read. I've got my own way of doing it, and then I pause when something interesting comes up, and maybe I tweet it. But it's a slow down thing of immersion. To me,
I have to interject here. Everybody thinks that the people who play really immersive games are this niche audience of hardcore gamers, and everyone else is into instant gratification with the mobile devices. Okay, The Hunger Games, which was the best-selling movie last year, made about $420 million. Right? The best-selling video game, Grand Theft Auto, made $1 billion in 3 days.
Yeah.
This is a game that takes how long to play? That is so immersive. If you think that the video games are a niche audience, it made twice as much money as the Hunger Games did in its entire run in just 3 days. People are paying real money for this and spending real amounts of time playing these games. And this is not a niche audience. If it's a niche audience, then the movies are a niche audience. I'd like
to, if I can, come back to what Tara was saying, about the difference between the virtual world and the real world. And when I'm talking about augmented reality, you think about a heads-up display. We use that term a lot, and a heads-up display in World is simply something that sticks off to the side, a little box. But if the term actually came from with using it in the military world where they would have something that is between your eyes and where you're going. So there's something there that's being displayed in front of your face that's augmenting your view of the world. So if you're driving down the street and you have an augmented reality set on, it can be projecting things in front of you. And I'm not talking about immersive world watching movies or things. I'm talking about you're going down the road, and instead of having billboards along the side of the road, you might have something being projected on the billboard by your viewer. So here's an allowable projection space. You're driving down a road where there's some trouble ahead. Instead of having all these signs that people steal and break down, you might end up actually having avatars on the street directing traffic around traffic problems or things like that, augmenting with virtual reality stuff.
Absolutely.
First thing I'm installing for that is an ad blocker.
Yeah, we did. There was a clip on last week's Week in Review show, which was somebody, responding to the Facebook acquisition of Oculus, had actually built a world, which was, quickly built a world, and this sort of bit of it, which was owned by Facebook, and the F logo was just everywhere, but it actually looked quite good. And there was another clip we shared last week from the supermarket chain Tesco. Who prototype? They have their own virtual world. I think they're prototyping it in Spain. I think it is, and you literally go into a thing that looks like a supermarket in Second Life, and you pick up your goods, put them in your thing, and they just think it's a more entertaining way of doing web shopping at the superstore.
Remember the Back to the Future scene where the giant shark jumps out of the billboard? I would hate to be driving down the street and have a giant shark jump out of my car.
Yeah, so much for driving.
What I do feel, concluding very briefly what I was about to say, is I do think there is a need for immersion coming back. And I'm not, because the gaming market is, as rightly pointed out, huge. It's always, it's been about 20 years. It's been grossing more money than the movie sector.
And nobody notices. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not in any of the news.
Yeah.
This is where we are already living. Sorry.
The people that use it know it, although it is principally games rather than any advanced form of immersion. But this extends to things like the iPads and the Kindle. I mean, how a lot of people just have Kindles because it's their walking book, and they are still immersing because they're immersing in novels on the metro or something like that. Immersion is here. There is just maybe just a tendency, especially in that sort of 20s, 30s group of very mobile people, who to actually do the short burst thing, and they're actually stopping learning because they're not absorbing detail about anything. They're just skimming the surface. And but I think that will change. People reach overload with these social networks and things, and then they start to think, you got to slow down now and again, and that's what the immersion is all about.
Yeah, you slow down, you play Grand Theft Auto for 10, 20, 50 hours.
Now, do you want to give Phelan a chance for a final note since he has to leave?
Oh, right. Yes, let's move. If we can at the same time, and let's start with Phelan on this track, let's move on, if we can, as well, to Ebbe's keynote and the revelations there.
Well, this is a very new approach for Linden Lab. Providing the truth for once is, substantially new. I think it sort of blew everybody off onto their keisters, so to speak. Very refreshing, though, to have somebody come in and to basically say, yeah, guess what? We screwed up. And not only did we screw up royally, and we want to try to rebuild that trust. I think the evidence, it's the way Linden Lab lost trust with us was through their patterns of behavior in terms of withdrawing of services, withdrawal of people, withdrawal of pretty much everything that sort of made Second Life special, at least to the community. And one of the things that I'm finding is extremely encouraging is that with Ebbe now in charge, there seems to be this new pattern of behavior which has been establishing itself in the last 2 months since he's been CEO, where they've been reversing that trend. And I think it will take a little while before people, what's the word I want to use? But I mean, until people
regain trust.
Well, I mean, it's
maybe.
Well, no, it's one of these things, right? I mean, you get the drunk that basically says, "Yeah, no problem, I'm off to Egan," and it's great. They clean up their act for 3 or 4 months, and they're sober, and they're making sense, and they're doing all these wonderful things, and then all of a sudden, 4, 6 months later, 9 months later, they're back on the wagon again, and whether this turns into a long-term pattern of behavior that will reestablish the trust of the community is yet to be seen. But I think the evidence is certainly there that has established that, this is not, in comparison to the last 5 years, this is no longer business as usual. We are now going back to a more synergistic relationship between the lab and the community, and I have no doubt that it will not be the same as it was back in 2006, 2007 at the height of when everything was going grand and everybody sort of loved what was happening with the lab. But I think it will be substantially better than anything that we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, I think he's clearly going to address, he knows the importance of addressing the communities. He knows it's all about communities and creators. So that, is a good starting point.
It is. I think whether they can build on that or not is yet to be seen. I mean, one of the things that we had talked about a little bit about this in the panel that we did on the Saturday, but I think one of the things, if Linden Lab really wants to sort of regain market share and continue to build on the platform that we have here, not only do they have to continue to try to get people emotionally invested in the platform and what the platform means to them, but they sort of need to help the communities develop resources outside of Second Life. And if you look at things like EVE Online and you look at World of Warcraft, part of the reason why World of Warcraft is so successful and why people, even though they complain about Cataclysm and then the Pandera thing and what have you, I mean, even they complain about how, this is not the same World of Warcraft as old type of thing. People are, not only are they emotionally invested in it, but they are financially invested in it. There are websites on websites on websites that are out there that are completely devoted to these particular things. There are guilds out there which, people have, a lot of time and effort and money, invested in. And nobody really wants to sort of see that go away. So you look at the amount of data storage that's being used just on things related to World of Warcraft, and it's amazing when you compare that to some of the numbers that are available for other things out there, like Facebook. It's not a small percentage; it's a huge percentage of like what Facebook and other groups have in terms of the amount of data that they have on files. So there's obviously a lot there, and none of this is owned by Blizzard or CPP. All of this is owned by the community, right? But the difference between them is Blizzard is out there actively supporting the community. They're basically saying, what can we do to help? CPP is out there saying, what can we do to help? Second Life for the last 5 years has been out there saying, how can we possibly screw you guys up in order to ensure that our lawyers can ensure that you never use the word Second Life anywhere inside your title? Right. I mean, it's like, okay, maybe you haven't quite paid attention to what's going on inside the rest of the industry, but this might not be a good idea. So if they're changing the attitude, if they're changing the way they're looking at things, maybe they'll pick up from the lessons that have been learned from groups like Blizzard and CPP and others. But this is still 2 months, and just because the drunk has gotten off the wagon doesn't mean that they're not going to start chasing after it 6 months from now. So I think we still need to see, but I think it's extremely positive, the moves that have been made so far. And if they continue in that direction, I think they will do well. I think it will reinvigorate this particular platform.
He's even letting the staff back in. That's a good start.
Well, when we see Torley Linden showing up on your program here, I think then we'll have a good idea that it's the staff will really be allowed back in. But we tried to get Torley. It was interesting. We tried to get Torley a couple of years ago to come on to the Virtual World's Best Practice in Education conference. He initially accepted, and then that mandate came down, which basically said, no way, no Linden's talking to nobody, no how, no way,
You're
and
kidding.
he had to back out.
It never occurred to me to. It's never
That
actually
was an
occurred to think
actual
of Torley,
policy?
Yeah.
That's insane.
That was an actual policy that they put in place. It started off ubiquitous enough. It basically said the initial policy that was put in place when Mark was there was basically to say, look, we're running into problems. No interviews, right? Don't show up to conferences. Don't show up to interviews. Nothing. Off the table. And then as Rodvik came in, all of a sudden that policy got extended to, something, it's not even worth having office hours. Don't go into Second Life at all, right? And
As a Linden.
yeah.
Yeah, and we knew about this because we were talking, like, over the years of VWCPE, we had been talking to people, and we sort of knew what was going on. But it was just very disheartening because it was sort of like, really? I mean, this is your stakeholders. These are the people that are paying your salaries, and you're refusing to talk to them. And so we had tried and tried and tried and tried. I think it was just extremely fortuitous this year between, Philips now ready to talk about high fidelity, which is a really cool product, and we happen to have Linden Lab, which is now changing direction. And I think it was sort of just fortuitous timing on our part more than anything else that we happened to get both of them on at the same time. But I really sort of see our conference as being a huge turning point. I think it sort of has now set the stage for what potentially is going to be possible over the next couple of years. And so, if that's the turning point, then, I'm proud to be a part of it. But I mean, it'll be, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens next. I mean, it's all about patterns of behavior. And will this pattern of behavior be consistent or not? And that now becomes the big question, right? So
I know when you and I we were actually offline at the time, but I mentioned a bit that clearly he agreed with, which is one of the problems for Linden Lab is probably they've never fully been able to identify the audience. And I said, well, the Second Life, is really like the real world in microcosm, everything and anything, and it was very clear that he agreed with that. Which I sort of took to heart. I think the thing is, over the years it has scaled, and maybe they haven't known how to continue town halls or things like that with the greater, with the increased residencies and stuff like that. Well, we can't go back, and in fact, we shouldn't be going back. We should be looking forward. But I think I felt there a bit of the idea of we've got to play for modern times, but we've got to return somehow to the essence of what Second Life was all about, and that's a feeling I got, and I just hope that's going to play out. But Kevin, you, I gather you've got to sort of leave us. It's a bit early, so yeah, I've got to.
I do need to run. Yes, I do need to run shortly, but.
Okay,
Kevin, I was wondering if you wanted to touch on, you were reminding me in 2011 at SLCC, that was kind of an interesting, it was like in the middle of this bridge of where they're like fleeing the island in 2011, where they had Linden's at the SLCC in, it's the not San Francisco,
Boston
Oak Ridge,
Oakland. And
so they had the SLCC there. There were a number of Linden Lab employees there. I don't know that many of them really kind of identified themselves, except maybe Oz. That they kept their distance. They wouldn't do interviews. I don't think they really even wanted to talk to Drax. It was an interesting feeling. There was actually seemed to be an isolationist fear where they were worried about. I don't know if it was the Woodbury's or what. But do you remember that one?
Well, I mean, they'd always sort of seem to have that little thing in the background in terms of, oh my God, what's Woodbury going to do to us this time? But no, I mean, yes and no. I mean, some of the events where some of the different Lindens have shown up, especially to the Second Life Communities Conference, which again is one of those things I'm hoping that we'll be able to put back on again at some point. But you've got situations that happen. So, for example, and I'm pretty sure this was in Boston, which was the last one I think we had, where here it was. Philip was the interim CEO. He came in and basically had to give everybody the bad news that the Teen Grid was shutting down, and to a certain extent, everybody sort of had this collective sigh of relief in terms of, oh my goodness, thank God that's probably the worst that's going to happen to us this year. And of course, 2 months later, they then dropped the bomb in terms of, by the way, I know your budgets are already set and you're already partway through your academic year, and I know this is really going to screw you guys up, but we're going to take away your discount as of December 31st. And it's just sort of like, But I mean, you have those patterns of behavior where you start reducing down on the level of access. And, I think, Ebbe's now opened the door to basically say, no, we want to talk to you. We want to get your ideas. We want to hear what you need. We want to know what we can do to make this better. And I think there's a realization that, there is something here that is substantive. Now they're trying to figure out where to go next with it.
Yeah, his blanket statement, I mean, he just came flat out and said, it was a mistake what we did to the educational community. I mean, I don't remember the full sentence, but the word mistake was absolutely there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think to me that was part of what was particularly refreshing was his opening salvo. It was like he had this little row of soldiers that were the big issues that were clear when he started, from all the comments and all the feedback and everything else that was going on that was getting thrown at him before he was even in the door. If you followed the Twitter stream that was going on, and he hit every single one of those in his first 5 minutes and knocked them out of the park. He said, "Yeah, we blew it on the education discount, and we really don't mean to try to take your goods, your creations from you. That needs that. I'm actively working on fixing that." And what was the third big one? Linden's Inworld again. And if I might comment, Phelan, I think from your perspective and all all the things that you're involved in, I think you had an insider sense of or knowledge about that official prohibition that I doubt most people had. I certainly didn't. I mean, it was obvious that you just simply didn't see Linden's Inworld anymore.
No,
but I was not aware, and it was like when he said that there had been a rule, there had been a restriction, no Linden avatars in World. It was kind of like I said, "Oh, isn't that interesting?" And my comment was, "I wonder who was responsible for that stupid decision."
Well, and again, I think that just sort of morphed from an original, because back about, oh goodness, well, the first year that we had, I'm trying to remember which year it was, but at least 3 years ago. I mean, we had a point where we basically said, look, we'd like to have somebody come talk, and then all of a sudden they yanked them, and it was sort of, okay, what's going on? And at that time, we were told there's a policy in place in terms of no interviews, no media, no contact, nothing like this. And it wasn't a blanket statement across the board. It was just simply saying, look, we're trying to deal with some stuff internal to Linden Lab, and we don't want employees going off and making statements that haven't been vetted by the communications department. Yeah. That's a perfectly legitimate position to have, especially when you're struggling, because there are so many things that are not working the way that you would like them to work. But then somehow that got expanded, and it got expanded, and it got expanded again, to the point where it just became near impossible
Stonewall. Yeah. Stonewall.
for anybody to do anything. And I don't think it was necessarily a stated policy per se, but going back to this concept about patterns of behavior, I mean, as you have Lindens that want to come into Second Life and want to work with the community, and they're being told, don't do that, right? Well, if you're told that enough times, even if it's not a policy, what happens? Well, it becomes a culture.
Yeah.
And
But from Ebbe's comments, it was a policy. It was a specific policy. And that was, I mean, my jaw dropped on that one, because I was not expecting to hear that, even though it was obvious that it certainly become a cultural thing.
I think I appreciate the task of what top management has to do, and I think all companies want to stay on message, and they may have a mission statement or something, and they don't want to risk things coming out, employees saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. And the Second Life scaled, I think Mark and Rodvik really administered it from this close position. And look at Apple Computer, for example. You can't get anything out of Apple employees. There are communities online and stuff like that, but generally, they keep everything under wraps. But they're not running a virtual world. They don't have a community of living people that they're almost governing in a subtle way. And I think what's happened now is that you have a top management that has said, right, well, we need to delegate. We need to allow our employees some kind of autonomy in terms of getting the platform up and helping it along. And, that's his attitude, a much more democratic approach. Whereas with Mark and Rodvik, it was clearly a top-down approach that, bordered on censorship of employees. So, it's another good sign, opening it up again, and hopefully opening up in a manageable way.
It is.
He went into that.
Yeah, I don't think that you can blame their lack of experience, though, on the fact that the platform was increasing, because in fact it hasn't. I mean, especially since 2009, when nonprofits and educators got nerfed, the platform has actually been dead even. I mean, it hasn't really grown substantially.
All you have to do is look at Daniel Voyager's log and check all of his concurrency lists and how many sims there are.
I think though you've got to take into account that people have drifted off from Second Life, and they've been replaced by newer users who don't remember what it was like before, and maybe whose attitude is not, it is different.
Well,
the end result, the registrations have grown and grown, but the active users haven't. But it's who are the active users now compared with, say, 5 years ago? And I think a lot of the innovators and pioneers are actually involved in other things now, and maybe have lost their passion for Second Life. And Second Life's population now, it may not seem to have grown, but it is actually a slightly different demographic of second generation.
Yeah, well, sort of. And I think Maria can probably help me out with this, because I think she's actually got some of the numbers on this. But if you look at the number of the longer term residents in Second Life that started to leave, and you start to have these sims that disappear and what have you, they didn't all go to Open Sim. A lot of them just disappeared. Right? They didn't go anywhere. They got totally disenfranchised. And instead of going to Open Sim, they just left.
Maria.
First of all, there's no way to know if they went to Open Sim or not, because if they're a school, for example, and they've lost their land in Second Life, they can just download the Open Sim software or call a hosting company and get a grid set up, and nobody knows. So the hosting companies that I talk to say they're running hundreds of grids for educators and businesses, but they will not release the names of any of those grids to me unless the grid is officially said, yes, you can tell her about us. And I guess they just don't want to ask. Really, there's a couple of schools that have been public about their use of setting up private grids, but for the most part, they don't want to talk to the press about this. So there's no way to know. But also with any platform, you're going to get churn. You're going to get some people coming in and some people leaving. And that's true for pretty much anything. And except for something that's like a social network, like Facebook, people will come and people will go. But if something bigger than that, then it's more of a one-way trip. Like when you go online, you once you've gone online, you only go offline for short periods of time, for vacations or to detox or something like that. But then you go back online again at some point because it's more than just an application. It's a bigger than that. And so people can go cold turkey on TV, or they can stop listening to the radio, or they can unsubscribe from a newspaper, but they're not going to stop reading as a whole. They're not going to disconnect themselves from an entire medium. And I think that right now, Second Life is an application. It's like Second Life, or it's like a particular newspaper, or a particular TV show, or a particular channel. But as the virtual world expands, it becomes more than that, then we're going to see a different way of looking at these numbers.
It's also important to look at what people are actually thinking that they're using it for. Some people are going to go into Second Life for conventions. Some people are going to go into Second Life for social, gathering at the fence posts and talking. Some will be going to gather news or something like that, visit friends and talk with relatives. So if somebody, for instance, goes into Second Life mainly because they have a friend in a foreign country that they like to visit with, then all of a sudden WhatsApp comes along. Well, they haven't left the conceptual idea of what they were doing. They've simply changed the media.
Mm-hmm.
I should apologise to our live audience, by the way, that I haven't been able to fully follow all the chat today. But I just noticed that Daniel Voyager mentioned something that it was also very pertinent to what Ebbe did, and that is he really only stuck to 20-25 minutes of his speech, and he deliberately, decided I want to take questions and have the discussion for the second half of his keynote, which was great in itself. I mean, it was participation on the spot, despite the fact he tackled most of the issues before the conversation started.
Well, it even went beyond that, because a number of people had commented to me, some of the volunteers at VWCPE had commented to me that even after his presentation was over, he was out walking around the sim talking with people and just, getting into the environment where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that is engagement, and you can't really fault that.
Pet Love just made the comment that he actually got as close to the audience as he could. Most of the people, it didn't help the person doing the videoing, is that. But most, like Philip, made the comment about Oh yeah. Well, Philip had made the comment. Oh, gee, this is odd. A virtual world, and you have a podium which is mirroring the real world. Interesting. And then he stayed behind the podium. But then Ebbe got there, and he was behind the podium. I don't know what, maybe about 2 minutes before he started walking around, and got right up to the corner of the quad sim. If he'd we were thinking, oh God, I hope he doesn't cross the sim barrier because things will go weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he got out there.
Lag mode. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah,
it actually reminded me of real life, where it's a typical thing with rock concerts, for example. The lead singer, does all his posing, and then he does his sort of thing of walking down the ramp and throwing himself into the crowd, and of course, the crowds love it. Yeah.
I think that a lot of people, I think, who work in the lab may think of this as a software platform, like they're working at Apple or they're working at Google or something like that. But in many ways, it's more like they're running one of those private real estate developments that has a little mall and a little stores and little schools in it, and you're when you're in there, people have to be able to interact with the employees who work there, and ask them stuff and do stuff. And when you walk into a store and you talk to a clerk, maybe the clerk can't comment about, big policies of the company, but they might comment about, specials or how they like working there, or, what's with the new uniforms. Or, you can chat with retail employees. So this is a lot like a retail operation, and the thought that the employees have all fled is, are hiding out somewhere is kind of a little creepy.
Well, if you bring up the idea of, like Mel was talking about Apple has their little Apple boutiques where you're actually, that's really marketing. That's the employees going out there and proselytizing for the product. And these office hours that they kind of sort of did were interesting for in SL, but really weren't doing that much.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Well,
Apple does have a retail side.
Yeah, it has a retail presence. Yeah. Well, the other thing too, I think in Ebbe's comments, as far as opening up the grid again for Lindens to come in, he obviously has no illusions that the customer is always right. I thought his comments there were quite interesting too, and slotted in with my sense of his having potentially a much more nuanced sophistication about customer interactions and working with customers and getting customer viewpoints. I thought of Microsoft and his time at Microsoft, and that he was a project or a product manager. And I know that, Microsoft, the usability testing that Microsoft at least used to do was quite sophisticated and quite extensive as far as bringing people in, sitting them down in front of computers, and then tracking every twitch to see what they did, how they did things, what they looked at, how long they looked at things, where they got frustrated, just all those kinds of things. So that was one of the messages that I got from his comments, that obviously the business of office hours and some of that probably was not very productive, and it's absolutely not possible for everybody in Second Life to have the ear of a Linden. That kind of personalized customer service isn't realistic. Given
but you have automated intelligent bots. You can clone yourself and.
Well, the thing is that there are lots of things they can do to provide some of that two-way communication, and for finding out what people's pain points are. And his comments about customers may tell you they want this solution. Well, that may not be the solution that really does it, because they don't understand everything that's under the hood. But if you know what the problems are, if you've got your finger on the pulse of what things are pain points for customers, i.e. us residents, you're much more likely to then turn those into into actions from the back end to solve them in ways that work in the big picture. So I'm very impressed with his comments around that whole theme.
I have something interesting, actually. Just an interesting point here, actually. It's curious. When we're actually broadcasting the two keynotes of Ebbe and Philip, the big ones, I hasten to add, Philip got a tremendous amount of viewers, and there were actually people in the audience holding signs saying Philip is God, and the fan sort of thing. And I wondered when Ebbe came on how that would compare, and actually, maybe not surprisingly, it was actually it was a good audience. It was a big crowd, but it didn't. I don't think everything was matched to capacity and crashability like it was with Philip. But Lapisian, who works with us and embeds all our stuff at slattis.com, which is where you can usually see high-res versions, he's actually just typed into chat here that since they went up, well, quite literally, well, in Philip's case, I suppose it's been up longer. But this is interesting. Since Friday, which is Friday evening, I guess, Ebbe's keynote went up. It's at Slatist, via Slatist, it's had 523 viewers, which, isn't billions, but I mean, it's a figure. Yet, the replays of Philip's opening keynotes are actually only 186. Which would suggest that the traction really here, at least in replays and people after the fact, it would show that it's Ebbe they want to hear, even more than Philip. Which is interesting because live it was entirely the other way around. So,
well, I wonder if you added the two of them together, the viewers the viewers plus the replays of Philip and the viewers plus the replays of Ebbe, if maybe they're a wash. Who knows?
Yeah, it might kind of balance out. Okay, let me go back.
His following.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I actually wasn't referring it referring to it in any sense of the personalities involved. It was simply, from my point of view, is I read blogs and lots of fashion blogs and Inworld communities and stuff like that, and out of the sphere kind of we travel in, so to speak, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of awareness that Linda Lab had a new CEO. Amongst the people who come in and, go to their yachts and, their clubs and stuff like that, it doesn't seem to have impacted that there's been a change of management. They're just getting on with their second lives. And therefore, and so I was actually quite curious because, attendance of Philip, I was thinking, Philip's Philip, you don't get to hear him speak very often, wherever he's appearing, they come in. So the fact that a lot of people seem to have taken interest in Ebbe too, in terms of replays, maybe people have been watching that didn't even know there had been a change of management. So, it's encouraging that, the new guy is getting traction, even if he isn't the god that Philip is.
Well, he's also...
Well, of course, there's another... I was going to say there's another source of potential bias in those figures, and that is we're talking about a specific Second Life media source.
Oh, that's true.
So artist. And so people watching Inworld are more likely to gravitate to something that has to do with Second Life than with something that has to do with, necessarily something in the bigger picture kind of virtual environments of Philip's focus.
Well, another thing that Ebbe seems to be doing, which is interesting, is he's actually out there tweeting. Now, I don't know if he's got some minion that's doing the tweets for him, but Ebbe's name is getting out there as someone who's tweeting. He's been retweeting a lot of things from Bevan Whitfield, our social media goddess. He had retweeted Pookie's time traveler video, as Bevan just noted, and so he's making somewhat of a name for himself in social media. So, and maybe that's going to get him some votes.
Mm-hmm. I'm almost certain it is him doing this, and I think that is the difference. For it's his feed, not Lyndon feed. It was very interesting because when they first came onto the Skype call for the recording, they launched the conference room in video from Linden Labs, and it was very obvious. Basically, he was there with his headphones. He had Pete Linden beside him, but he was controlling it, and he was just referring to Pete for the odd technical answer or something. Whereas I have the impression in some other previous circumstances, everything's been very controlled, and you're being given a message rather than the person. So that that was just a little sneak inside thing we got, which I thought was great. He's been tweeting since before he even joined the lab, and I'm sure he's still continuing it. I'm pretty sure it's a personal feed. He's following everything. Is there anything? I'll come to Maria first. Anything else we took away from Ebbe? We have actually lost Phelan now. He's had to run off to something,
Okay.
so it's down down to us. Anything else we took away from Ebbe's keynote?
Okay. I like the fact that he said that they're not planning to keep content locked down in Second Life, and specifically mentioned OpenSim. So that was interesting. Pathfinder John Lester wrote a little note about that. I thought that was an interesting that he admits that OpenSim exists. That's nice.
And he did refer in I think twice to the concept of metaverse too. He really wasn't anchored in SL.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I think that's really interesting. And it's a good sign that they could think of themselves as a player in a broader space. I like that a lot. I just checked the latest YouTube stats because Mel, you've posted all the keynotes up, and I see Ebbe has 138 views and Philip has 156 views. So they're actually pretty close.
So, yeah. Semantics, isn't it?
Now I only have 16 views, but I am not.
They don't know what they're missing.
They're missing a naked me. Yes. They're missing the opportunity to see me with only my shoes on.
I've forgotten about that. Okay, everybody out there, you've got to check Maria's keynote.
I'm wearing my shoes, my hair, and my little name tag in the middle. That's it.
Oh dear. And after all that trouble you went to go costuming and getting an AO.
Oh my god! And getting the slides in World, and I created this. Text file that I could go through for the kind of a transcript of my whole speech, really. And I couldn't use any of it because nothing worked.
Actually, one nice thing that did come out of this was Maria's actually talking her keynote, and Justin Clark Casey's keynote, and a little panel were actually held on OS Grid, not Second Life, and the actual VWCPE venue in OS Grid was suffering real problems. Not OS Grid itself, but that particular sim. We couldn't really cart the audience off to an adjacent sim or something. But Krista Lopez, who is actually the creator of the Hypergrid, made a very nice offer, saying if we do anything like this before, that we can use the OpenSim Conference Center, which is specially staged and managed for such events.
Conferences, because I remember last year giving speeches at the OSCC. They did a really good job with stability and making sure that everything was up while it was needed to be up. And it was really impressive.
Oh, we were running around crazy with that. It was just seeing the guys working in the background was pretty amazing. I got to see some of the lunacy because I was managing the streaming team, so it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that was phenomenal because you had about 12 different Ustream channels running concurrently on different sessions, and it was overload.
Now, I have also been on Second Life panels that had problems because the region crashed too. So this isn't something that's totally unique to OpenSim, but it was particularly embarrassing because this was a high-profile conference, and it crashed while the lead developer of OpenSim was speaking.
Oops.
Well, yeah.
But he had, he has no rights to actually, it's the way OpenSim works. It's open,
Exactly. It's not his fault.
Are you talking about Justin's talk?
Yeah, with Justin's talk. Yeah. But now he was involved in the setup for the Open Simulator conference. So if it had crashed there, you would have been able to point fingers directly and say, "Hey, wait a second, you were involved in setting this server up and making sure it was stable." But so in this case, it wasn't directly really to him. But still,
Mind
it
you,
was an embarrassing thing.
the OSCC conference, I mean, they had people like me who were logging in twice a day for about 2 weeks in advance, stress testing the whole thing. So, it was really, really, the background work done on that was just superb,
Yeah, no.
Well, everything around that was really pretty amazing. I mean, I was working with some of the developers there. I wasn't doing development, but I mean, they were coming in, helping us to set up for the streaming. They were checking everything out because they were very concerned about making sure that stuff really was working right. Mm-hmm. And they knew that they were breaking new ground, and this was a beta test. It was, in a sense, a beta test of the environment by having the conference in the environment that they were actually having a conference about.
Right.
And Maria, I've got good news for you.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Well,
I'm getting a puppy?
From the same source, the embeds we put on Slartist, you've got 138 viewers.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Cool. Very excited. So, I guess people turned out to see what I look like without my clothes on. All right. Well, I have to say that at least in a virtual world. Well, that's what they asked me to talk about. We can have a private chat afterwards. But,
too much information.
Yeah, I think
normally when I come to the VWBPE, I give it my standard talk about the hypergrid. This is how it's growing. This is how it's used. These are the numbers, some growth charts, and here's some examples of schools, what they're doing out there, and how it's working out for them. So I have this standard talk that I update once a year, and I give it over and over and over again. So this time I had to write something from scratch because they wanted something different, and it was interesting. It was fun to think about, and it was also convenient because I happened to be giving kind of the same talk, except with a journalism focus instead of a educational one, at the Society of Professional Journalists convention in Boston that's coming up in 2 weeks in person. So I better not be naked this time. I'm just saying that right up front.
I don't know. You might get me to Boston.
I'll lose all my clothes on the turnpike. Oh no! So this was kind of a way for me to preview all my thoughts, with a more friendly audience before going up before journalists who are all going to be like, oh yeah, this is all hype. We've heard it all before. So that was nice. Speaking of conferences, OpenSim conference is going to be happening next November, and we're starting to take proposals. OpenSim, the 2014 conference, we've already begun planning. We've had our two initial planning meetings, and we're going to be putting out a call for proposals this week. So if you are thinking of giving a talk that's related to business, you would talk to me directly because I'm heading up the business track. And we're going to be on this track. So if you have a business use cases or enterprise use cases for things or shopping, virtual commerce cases of anything related to do with OpenSim, the hypergrid, the Oculus Rift, the new marketplaces that are coming up. Definitely talk to me about it. New hosting features, new website features that you're offering that's commerce or business related, you talk to me. We also have the education track. We've got an arts and culture track. So a lot of stuff happening. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to be posting press releases about it, accepting calls for submissions. If you're doing research, there's a research track. You can actually present research papers, and there'll be a little bit of a peer review process there as well for researchers. And so it's coming up. So set your calendar.
Well, I'm going to throw an extra piece in there. Yes, it's November, I think it was the weekend around November 9th. And,
it's November 8th and November 9th.
There you go. And so I'm also going to put out the thought that there's always a need for good volunteers, or people that are going to help with the stuff in the background. We were running a little shy on streamers last year. We, as Mel said, we were running around recording all the different programs, and I think we only missed maybe one or two, and one of those was because of technical difficulties. So, but any, if you're interested in getting involved in any way, still, get in touch with Maria, or if you're interested in some of the volunteering work, you can go through me and I'll forward it on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great. That's going to be a highlight of the year amongst many. And it's nice, actually. It's the right time of year, I think. Yeah. It's sort of, it's when a lot of other stuff's gone quiet, so it gets a lot of mileage. And Daniel's praising it in chat here, for what happened last year. So it can only get better, Daniel, and everybody else.
And the great thing about this conference is that it really, since it brings everybody together, the viewer developers, the server developers, the organizers, the educators, it really forces people to address the big issues of OpenSim in one spot. So as a result of last year's conference, there were tons of improvements to the OpenSim code, making it more robust and scalable and stable. They fixed the teleport bug because they got all these people together and they're like, why haven't we fixed this yet? Oh yeah, let's do something about that. It was a really, really great thing for the entire OpenSim community, and I just can't wait to see what's going to happen as a result of this year's conference as well.
Right. Now, I guess we'll probably start wrapping up before too long, but I'd like to get back to the keynotes and the VWP conference itself. I'll start again with you, Maria, with thoughts on, basically thoughts on the other keynotes, but in particular, obviously you can't comment on your own, but I'm thinking of, despite vision difficulties and everything else, we had both Justin, who was earlier than you, Justin Clark Casey, and we also had a nice OpenSim panel hosted by our friend Philippe too, from Chilbert here, in fact. Any thoughts on those? I know you're glued to them.
I paid a lot of attention to the Rosedale and the Ebbe ones. I listened to the OpenSim ones as I was prepping for mine. I don't have anything that I disagreed with. I was like, okay, nice discussions. I am, for once in my life, I am speechless.
Oh, well, there we go. How about you, Dirk? Did you watch? Keep an eye on the OpenSim events.
I watched a bit. I do want to come back to the Ebbe one for a moment, because one of the things that was interesting was the featured panel that Bevan Whitfield put together of the past, present, and future of Second Life and virtual worlds. They had some. I encourage people to go back and watch that, because they had some interesting commentary. I convinced a couple of them to go and watch the replays, because at least one of the panelists was wanting to avoid watching them just so he wouldn't be biased. But we got him to watch the Ebbe one, and he was quite positive. So there were some very interesting reactions from some incredible cynics. And so go check out Bot Girls and Will Burns or Aeonix Aeon's blogs if you can find them. And then Terry Bobo was there, and I just butchered his last name. I don't really know where to find his blog, but he's got some very interesting background insights on those things. Coming to the OpenSim part, I found it interesting that Ebbe was actually did reference some outside things, possibly hinting at cooperation with other things, mainly high fidelity, but I think he's got a vested interest there. Mm-hmm. But a big thing in that talk with the featured panel was this concept of coming up with APIs for Second Life that, having some bit more open thing. I don't know that SL or Linden Labs is actually thinking about it, but some APIs would be really an interesting way to go. They use the WordPress model where there's a solid core maintained by the primary developers, and then APIs that can be shared with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, as far as I know, they have no APIs at the moment, but it's certainly it's very interesting thoughts there, actually, that they could go that way to, even if it's only for the social networks and things.
I thought they had an API of a kind for their currency, because they allowed third-party exchanges to sell Linden Lab currency to people.
I'm wondering how much they roped that in, because there was that whole thing with, if it's a real currency that can be exchanged amongst countries, then it becomes something that's subject to heavier regulation. I don't remember hearing where that went.
Well, that's why they only you can own, if you're a third party exchange, you can only sell this currency to other people. You can't redeem it for real money. So that way they can maintain the fiction that it's a purely play money. Like, for example, you play Donkey Kong and there's gold coins in there. It's not actual money. Or something like more like something like if you play Farmville and you pay money for Farmville bucks, whichever one you pay real money for, but you can't take them out and spend them afterwards.
But you can still get it out through Linden Lab, can't you?
Yes, you can. And so now what they're saying, and I think this is the excuse they're giving, is that you're not actually buying it back from Linden Lab itself, but from other users of it. It's kind of like you stood outside a video arcade and sold your video arcade coins to someone else. Those tokens aren't necessarily real money, just because you can sell it to people. Just like World of Warcraft gold isn't real money, just because you can sell it on eBay or in a dark alley somewhere, but it's not official.
I'm reminded of last week's news where, in America at least, the IRS or whoever defined it, the Bitcoin thing, didn't they? As it's not a currency, it's a commodity. And I just wonder if it came down to it, Linden dollars could become a commodity at some point, as opposed to an actual currency. It's
at 253 to the dollar versus what is it, about $600 per Bitcoin right now? That might be kind of a
wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the whole currency thing once it shakes out. I think right now it's just too minor an issue to deal with, especially compared to, say, Bitcoin.
Well, I think more importantly, it's too far out. It's too far out of the area, the zone of comfort for most of the people that are having to try and deal with this, and definitely out of the public's view.
I wasn't necessarily thinking of the current moment. I was thinking, there have been suggestions that one way that Linden Labs could cooperate with OpenSim, for example, is it could become a central currency, be an interchangeable currency.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm thinking more case down the line. Even Philip, although I don't know whether he mentioned it in the keynote, but the other live clip that he delivered a couple of weeks ago that we showed, he certainly mentioned it there. That they were thinking about issues like currency systems and things like that, and whether he didn't know whether High Fidelity would ever host something like that, but he saw the need for it being hosted on the horizon. So
personally, I think that odds are we're going to have a third-party system similar to PayPal, possibly even PayPal if they figure out this is going on, possibly something that's built on a Bitcoin kind of platform, although probably not Bitcoin itself. But it would be something that works in all virtual worlds, and this could be independent from any one of them. Now, Second Life has the opportunity to be that guy, and for all I know, they'll take it. But they'll have to become, if it becomes real money and it becomes redeemable, they're going to have to register as a financial institution, as a money transmitter, or as an actual bank.
And then you're going to get into all those microtransactions because, I mean, so many things. A really beautiful pair of sandals with sculpted mesh feet is like 280 lindens, which is about, what, $1.10?
Yeah.
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you're going to go get some smaller thing, like some jewelry for 50 lindens, now you're talking about like what 35-cent transactions, and then that has to be tracked. The transactions have to be trackable so that they can actually report the currency exchange back and forth.
It's way down the line, but I mean, just as every so often I spend £25 on a new iTunes card, to top up my apps. I've never bought one. I don't really want one. I can't think of a useful one. But, I know my local supermarket sells Facebook cards, so that you can pay for tokens in games and stuff like that. And those are equally tiny.
Well, I'm not looking to put it down because I would love to see this. They were talking about microtransactions when it came to newspapers. You could actually go in and sculpt the newspaper to where you would generate your 35-cent newspaper based on the stuff you want. A penny and a half for this story, etc.
Yeah, none of it's taken off so far. There were also several attempts to create an online-only payment systems like NetBeans and eCash and stuff like that during the dot-com boom. And none of those really came to pass either. And I think one of the problem is people don't like keeping track of different currencies. It's annoying. Yeah. Whereas the PayPal option was everything's denominated in dollars, so you know how much money is in there. You don't have to do the mental conversions all the time. And I think that's one reason why PayPal stuck it out, besides the fact that they had a decent infrastructure for payments that was really usable, is that it was denominated in dollars. And so Linden dollars could easily be called denominated in dollars as well. There's no reason why they're called Lindens, and there's the exchange rate. So and I think that people have a really easy time spending 3 pennies for something.
If you add on to that, it wouldn't be so hard if you could just block sales, not block as in prevent, but make a block sale. So you have to buy and sell lindens in blocks of, say, 10,000 lindens, because that's not going to hurt anybody's feelings. Okay, so I have to save up 10,000 lindens before I can change them in. That's, so what? But I can spend them in Inworld. I can spend them in another place.
Or what they can do, and this is something... This is something that Facebook does and all the virtual world currency people do, is that they have business relationships with people who can cash out. So say, for example, you are a Facebook vendor and you have a deal with Facebook where people do stuff with Facebook currency, and you as a partner of Facebook have to be able to cash this out. iTunes is a great example. If you're selling stuff on iTunes, you have to be able to get your money after iTunes takes its 30% cut. So when people spend money on iTunes, like when they buy an app and have an in-app purchase of some tiny little amount, Apple bundles them up so that they're not processing each one of them separately. So they save money on processing by waiting a day and then processing all those at once. But they take their cut and then they give the seller, the participating merchant, their money out, and they do it by having business relationships with Apple that doesn't violate the whole closed loop thing of their currency. And the way you do that is you set up a business framework to do that. So Second Life could do that too with its Inworld partners, where if you're registered as a merchant through some kind of online mechanism where you provide your identifying tax information and stuff like that, then you're allowed to cash out your lindens. And for everyone else, it's a closed loop system. And then they can go and make it a public currency throughout the whole metaverse and have everybody use it freely.
You mentioned PayPal earlier, and it actually annoys. That's the only one I've actually got around to using, and it's apart from the Lindens and microcurrencies, but and I just keep them to the worlds they're in. But I tend to think of PayPal like an international currency because I'm actually in the UK, of course. And you mentioned it's anchored to the dollar, but of course at my end it's anchored to the British pound.
Right.
So it's, but I still see it as an independent, sort of an international sort of account that is just purely digital. It just, for my convenience, it shows me my balance and everything else like that in British pounds. I mean, any system that can basically be sensitive to local currency wherever you are, and then link that to the digital values, and the bulk transaction calculation makes perfect sense, really. It's a bit like adding up royalties on books and publishing houses. You wait till there's a lot. You don't pay out a separate check for every half penny that comes in on a book sale.
Yeah, the reason you want a virtual, like a separate name for it, is for in-game immersion. You want to have gold coins in a game. You want to have the, whatever game currency to remind people that you're inside a game, that this isn't the real world, that they can spend as much as they want, that it's play money. So to the extent that Second Life is a game, a social game, or a role-playing game, then having Linden dollars helps maintain that illusion that this isn't real, that you can spend of it as much as you want because it's just play money. The minute you put make it a dollar, then you remind people, oh, this is real money I'm spending. So, and this is real interactions. This is real, and so that might hurt that aspect of it.
I think a lot of what's going on in Second Life, though, people are looking. A number of people that I talk to, it's interesting. It's so immersive in their thoughts that it's not really a game. They're concerned about how they look, and they want to have on nice clothes and nice accessories. And so, just like you're concerned about that in real life, you want to have nice clothes and nice accessories. It's an expense that you do knowledgeably that, this is 280 lindens and that's 400 lindens. I think I'll get this one because it looks better. So it's interesting conversations.
Oh yeah, I hate the idea that I'm wearing something, a freebie that's one of those lice-written thrift shop things when I'm on TV. I want to wear something nice that I bought from the marketplace that looks fancy. Mm-hmm.
Most of my costumes in my inventory I've never worn. It's a sort of subliminal habit to actually buy them in case I'm in a machinima that needs that costume, or in case I'm on TV. And as Tara says, I never do change the costume, even though I got yeah. They're kind of
we're badgering him.
Yes, psychologically, to me, they're props for an imaginary movie.
Well, I think it took me about 2 years before I bought anything.
Yeah, me too. Actually, it wasn't until I somehow started accumulating some lindens. I thought, well, why not? It's not real money. It's not very much money either. Okay, well, but let's get into the roundup here. I mean, we covered as best we could the open sim stuff, and Dirk, you mentioned, of course, that to me that Saturday panel, past, present, and future, was a real highlight panel as well. But maybe we just go round each of us. Again, maybe starting with Maria, looking at, I guess it's Friday and Saturday, really. We've covered Ebbe, but any keynote sessions, whatever, that really stood out, whether they were broadcast or not. Maria?
Sorry. I've had my head down for the most of it this week.
Well, fair enough. I can understand that. I'm surprised Phelan didn't have his head down and actually got here. I mean, it's been rather intense, to put it mildly. Okay, Dirk, then, maybe a quick summary from your point of view of all the I guess the late Thursday, Friday, Saturday sessions.
Well, I really hate to say this. I was in a very similar position with Maria because I spent a lot of my time in the background, running around trying to help keep things going. We really had an interesting time at this conference because a lot of the software that we worked on for the website, I don't know if anybody remembers going there, signing in for getting a new... Maria's laughing. Did you submit a proposal and have problems or something?
No, I couldn't get the site to load at all.
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute. You mean during the conference?
Yes.
Yeah, I made some comments about trying to access the calendar.
Right. That was, and if you noticed on Saturday, we had some schedules out there that you could actually get to. This was part of the rush to get the software working. Up until the conference, there was the part where you had to submit your proposal, do the peer reviews. We've been working on this software for a while now, trying to get everything really tuned in, and we're going to be, I think we're probably going to be cooperating some with OSCC on having this proposal system, so you may see a similarity between the two soon. Then there was the work we had. We have this developer. I'm trying to remember if it's his real life name or his second life name. It's Tim Short, who was working on the lanyards and the HUD. And, we're just working on stuff that is we'll call it kind of cutting edge, just because that gives us a better excuse for making mistakes. and unfortunately, sometimes when you work on something leading up to a conference, you work on it with a couple of people. And you have this HUD that hits the website and gets some data out of it and displays it in World. It's really cool. The functionality that he built is really cool. The lanyards, knowing who you are, the HUD being able to tell you where to go next, the schedule that's actually coming from the website. It's not an in-world fixed thing. And then you get 200 or 300 people doing this at the same time. And then you have to disable the WordPress plugin because it brings your entire server down.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
I gather, again, I'm not a techie, but I was talking with Kevin earlier, and I gather, basically, it's some kind of code individually calculates the XML file, calculates every single instance independently.
Oops.
Something like that.
Unlike a null where it just loads for everybody.
Now, picture doing that for every person, and then if you accidentally put one of these calls inside of a loop that is repeating this, and it just doesn't strike you when you're developing it. I mean, it's not exactly the kind of thing like I had somebody working for me that deleted a database once, and this was at a international bank. But it's not quite the same. But we're human. We make these mistakes and we move forward. We find this stuff. Like Marie was saying, why didn't we get this teleporting stuff work? Okay, let's get it working now. Well, here we didn't get some of the stuff working, but next year we have got the starting point of the stuff that he was doing with the lanyards is just way cool. I mean, a presenter's lanyard would hand you the tools for presentations. A mentor's lanyard would give you some links for some of the things to look at to help the people with, kind of a thinker sort of thing. And there's just a lot of stuff, a lot of neat stuff. I'm looking forward to the next conference because we're just going to be working on this stuff it's neat.
I'm having the same discussion right now in my head with the Hyperica directory, because right now it's all a WordPress database. And if I make it accessible through an API to in-world objects, am I going to just crash my entire site? Because WordPress isn't really designed for that huge amount of interactivity.
Yeah, it's an interesting tool. It's kind of built for the masses, and I've actually started looking at Drupal just to see if that might be an interesting direction.
I'm actually looking at the Google App Engine for the database functionality, and keeping it totally separate from the WordPress and the site. And Google just released PHP support for the Google App Engine, so I don't have to learn Python to do it, because I already know PHP. So this is something that I'm working on my first little gadget in the next couple of weeks.
Great. I think we might be getting a bit technical.
Yeah, we've diverged a little bit from Al's interest of.
Here.
We're geeking out here.
I'm falling out of my depth, although I suspect Tara knows what we're
Well, you know, there's some of that I don't work with. There's some of it I have. It's not stuff I want to talk about in my spare time.
Sure.
But I'm glad
I
we at least got to the point of talking about the schedule not working, and
Yeah.
you know, these things do happen, and just as you go around, it was really interesting to see how people reacted to some of the things that were breaking in the background, because you know, it's like the measure of the person isn't like the measure of the conference isn't how well everything functions. It's how you react to the things that break. And it just felt really good.
And we're always learning, you know, what goes on one year will be perfected the next year. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, and speaking from a period of my life when I was organizing two big real face-to-face conferences a year, involving multiple presenters for continuing psychological education for psychologists. And at one of those conferences, we had the misfortune of having a local vehicle careen off the road and take out a power pole, which knocked out all power to the convention facilities. And unfortunately, one of the presenters had his presentation was very heavily slide based, and he was dead in the water, and did not have any kind of a backup plan for how he could present his information without the slides. So it does pose some interesting challenges when you add the whole virtual environment to it, and any presenter who doesn't kind of come up with a plan B ahead of time, in their head is could find themselves missing everything but their shoes, Maria.
Yeah,
At times like this, I'm glad I specialized in ad-libbing.
one of the things that I do before every student conference is I put up my slides online and I share them. And I set up a bit.ly link to the slides. I was so glad I did that this time, because the cameras were able to point to my online slides, since even though they worked the day before when we tested everything out, they did not work the day of the conference. But they had the online version as a backup ready to go.
Yeah, you could always put it out.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Pet love, anything that has you in it goes well.
Now, this is perfect, actually, because although you can't see her on a seat today, we have, of course, Pet Love here filming and on voice. And I noticed, well, in the chat while we were talking there, you came in with, I'd actually like you to just come in on voice and give me your highlights. I know designing Andrew Hughes and designing digitally was a major winner for you. God, he's been around a long while. Good to see him again. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what some of the highlights were for you. Mm. And it was Andrew too, I think, who was telling us about, his whole setup is run democratically. All the staff are shareholders, and they all take part. It sounds like a sort of collective decision things, which.
And unfortunately, Pet's comments never got to the audience. Apparently, you don't have your set up right now.
Oh. Oh, sorry. Well, we have to. Yeah. Okay. Are you turning on? Okay. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen who are listening, as Tara said, apparently you didn't hear that. Pet Love is, as always, wonderfully on the job filming for us, but because she's not on the seats, nobody can hear her because she's not being got voice on. So I'm going to ask her again very quickly. One of the highlights I actually do with Andrew Hughes from Designing Digitally was one of the keynotes. I think that was Friday morning, and I wanted Pet to come in and just give her thoughts on highlights, and I know that was one of them. So at the risk of boring us, but nobody else, maybe you'd like to repeat that, Pet.
Okay.
What were your highlights? And we'll start with that one.
First, let's make sure. Can everybody hear me?
Okay, I'm looking in the live stream chat.
Me too.
And, getting some idea. Can people hear, Pet?
That's a shame.
Is there
Okay,
anybody
good.
out there?
Yep,
Yes,
Daniel says
Daniel
yes.
can hear. Yeah, they can all
Okay.
hear.
I'll try to make it a little shorter this time. Andrew's company designed programs that used virtual and real life applications to train people, whether they were students or industry employees, just anything. He used the tools available to him in several worlds to introduce and reinforce learning. His programs were very thorough. They were well planned, and they had measurable results. And they were fun for the participants, and the people even enjoyed learning. I was saying it's every educator's dream. I was far more eloquent the first time.
Yeah, well, you pointed out he had a staff of only 10 people, and
A staff of 10.
You got the impression he would have needed a staff of 50 or something.
I have worked in education, and I've worked in the business world too, and when you come across somebody with a company and with the type of product that this company puts out, Andrew's company puts out, it just blows your mind, because there are so many people who have great ideas and want to do good things, but to actually make it happen as eloquently, again that word, as Andrew Hughes' company seemed to, digitally designed learning, I think it's called. He's on the net, designing digitally. Yeah, it's just a super company and a super approach. I would just recommend it to anybody who is trying to teach anybody something. It was fantastic.
Yeah, well, I agree. It was a great keynote, and viewers probably did hear me comment on the fact that he runs it democratically, like
yes,
a collective.
Very enlightened, a very enlightened organization, I'd say. Mm-hmm.
And I'll echo the fact that Pet Love was exceedingly eloquent and just fluidly describing what she was feeling the first time around.
Thanks.
And I know it's hard. I know it's hard to repeat something that's said off the cuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's terrible. I just don't remember full stop. Now, what did I say 2 minutes ago?
I know, right? It was so good. Darn.
I don't have a clue. Anyway, Pet Love, anything else as well as Andrew's presentation? Anything else that grabbed you? Because you're on the spot with me for most of the broadcast wins, anyway.
I really thought all the keynotes were very good this year, and my heart goes out to the people on OpenSim. It was such an opportunity for OpenSim to shine, and I just really felt badly for them that that sim had so much trouble. That was unfortunate. But people did a really, really great job. Philip, Ebbe, great highlights. It was wonderful to meet Ebbe and understand where he's coming from. It was great to see where Philip's going to lead us all soon, and Ebbe too. And all of us, Maria, everything you do, Mal, all of us, I said this during the week at some point, but we are on the crest of a certain type of wave. There's a real good chance that virtuality and reality are going to have to be mixed soon, given the fact that technology is proceeding at the pace that it is. We have to remember, real life, not everybody has a computer, not everybody likes to use technology, But it is a fantastic tool, and the possibilities really are stunning. So it's exciting to be around it as it evolves.
Well, I'd like to actually interject something else that I am admonishing myself for just totally missing this in this whole conversation that we've been having. The conference was Virtual World's Best Practices in Education. It had, as we saw, Ebbe was there, Philip was there, that was great. There was a bunch of other keynotes that were really great. There were 6 featured panels which had this wonderful smattering of rock stars from around the virtual and metaverse. But the whole conference is predicated around the thought of presenting best practices of education in the virtual world. So how can people teach using virtual worlds? And I think there were about 60 presentations that didn't get recorded, by the way. There were about 60 presentations in, I think it was 4 different tracks that educators from all over the place came in, did their presentations. These were peer-reviewed. So the proposals came in a couple months back. They were reviewed by their peers. Some of them were rejected. Some of them were sent back for reworking. And Letty Luckstone was the program chair. It was her job to make sure that all of these proposals got reviewed. All of these proposals. I mean, it was a Herculean task.
Amazing woman. Letty is amazing.
Yeah.
And I just got to say, okay, what kind of report do you want to see? And so she'd say, well, can you sort it by this way this time? And she'd ask me these things that were basically simple SQL responses and provide her with the information she needed to put this whole thing together. And by the end of it, she was an OCD nightmare. But I mean, it was just wonderful to see all the stuff that she was doing. She's just pulled it all together. And so 60 presentations that most of you probably didn't see,
which is such a shame.
Oh yeah, but if you're an educator, if you're listening to us and if you review this again, if you're an educator and you're interested in this kind of stuff, I believe there is some sort of a journal coming out, because one of the things that we're doing is making sure that there is some form of recognition for the people that did their presentations.
That's great.
So it's just an amazing conference, and I hope we don't get totally lost and starstruck by the absolute fantastic personalities we had that got recorded. But and by the way, Letty is just giving me an interesting response about calling her an OCD nightmare.
Oh, you're in trouble now. But you know what? Last year we did get to stream some of the actual educators' presentations, and they were thrilling. I was sorry this year that we only recorded keynotes. I understand, why we did, and that's okay. But I think it would be real nice to maybe next year find a way to, if we could just find a way to stream a little bit more. Somehow.
I think the ideal thing will be to do what Dirk supervised at the Open Sim conference, and that is literally have cameras in every location so that you can stream everything. But unfortunately, the budget didn't stretch to it. So anybody out there who wants to sponsor this,
it could be volunteer.
Yeah. But also anybody out there who wants to sponsor this incredible conference, I think that would be very much appreciated too. They do have some sponsors, but they can always use more. After all, the more backing they've got, the better it can be made. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd be happy.
Personally, although it doesn't, it's something I don't always notice because I'm on the broadcast end. But I think somebody else who's done a great job in archiving this is Gentle Heron from Virtual Ability, because she's literally transcribed conversations and broadcasts as they're happening in text form. So I suspect we probably have a lot of archives in at least text form, even if it isn't film.
And the word awesome isn't anywhere even close to sufficient to describe Gentle.
No.
That's right.
Just brilliant.
Yep.
Brilliant better than awesome? But I don't know. She's all of them. Brilliant and awesome. Sorry.
Awesome sauce is the only word that possibly comes close.
It comes very close, yes.
Okay, Dirk, I'm going to start rounding up in a minute, but one of the great things, of course, that literally in the closing minutes of the conference, as the big screen comes up and Phelan announces next year's conference. We already know that it will be 2 weeks before Easter, and the logo is there already. The theme is going to be Crossroads, and tell more if you can.
Oh yeah, well every year the conference, really what it comes down to is we provide an idea, a kind of just something to focus on, a word like connections. Everybody's going to pull out of that word what they think, how it relates to the educational process that they're involved in, and it started off literally with just I think we had a link to, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name. There was the 1970s video series, BBC series called Connections, and it just started off with that, and then let people take it where it would go. Phelan was just adamant to not fully define it because he wanted the people in the conference to define where it was going to go with the name Connections, and it'll probably be the same thing with Crossroads.
Yeah, it's the same thing. The University of Western Australia do that with a machinima contest. It's usually just one word, and the interpretations are vast. There'll be the obvious, the subtle, whatever. But it's just something that you. It's like a mantra that you can muse on to decide what you're going to do with it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great stuff. So that will be, in fact, in March next year. I forget the exact dates, but the general principle is to have it 2 weeks before whenever Easter falls on a given year. And I'm just
going to really quickly stick in here the question of if there's an estimate. I'm asking Letty if there's an estimate of when the call for proposals will be out. Put her on the spot, see if she'll even answer me.
I could drag her into the call.
Yeah,
just kidding. I wouldn't. Never mind.
She's had enough fame on TV for the last few days. Apparently, she's felt nervous about it, so we delicately let her off today. But you did a wonderful job, Letty. If you're out there, brilliant.
Oh, she just did. She just did wonderfully. She has stepped up on so many different things, and it's really fun working with her because she's a lunatic. As we all are.
You're going to get in trouble, Dirk.
Well, I'm watching her replies. So, right, we don't actually have. Excuse me. We don't actually have a timeline for when the call for proposals is going to come out at this point. And so just keep an eye on VWCPE.org and see where it goes, because it's going to be fun every year. I've been involved with it in a couple of years now, and it's nice. It's neat. I used to be in academia a bit, and it's just wonderful to be involved with a group that cares so much about teaching people so much.
Those dates. I'm just looking at March 2015. Looks like March 18th to the 21st. That's based on Wednesday through Saturday. And a amusing little side note. Next year's you're going to have the wonderful adjustment between the fact that the United States goes on daylight savings time in early March, and the UK and other places don't until the end of March, and so the UK will not be on daylight savings time yet, but the US will be. So.
Oh dear, and I know all about that one. 7 hours time difference. My suggestion, because this is what I do, is call for proposals will be announced, but don't wait. Work on your proposals now. This is an absolutely wonderful conference to submit proposals for, and if you're involved in education in virtual worlds in any way, think of a proposal now, so when the call goes out, you've got it ready, not last minute, is what I say.
Absolutely, and if you know anybody that would be interested in doing some sponsoring, that we can, because we think of all of this stuff as pretty much being free, because hey, some of this is open source, and some of this is get an account on Second Life, doesn't cost you anything. Gosh, but there's a lot of people putting a lot of time in this, and some of the stuff actually costs. Getting licenses for certain software, getting permissions to use certain things. There are some minimal costs involved, but they add up, and sponsorship is a wonderful thing. Thinkerer has sponsored us every year, and it's just, that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, and and of course, well deserving of that award. If maybe just for that, but no, for so much more as well. That was absolutely great to see. That was a fine ending to the whole 4 days. Giving Thinker that award. Okay, well, believe it or not, this is one of the longest shows on record. We're approaching 3 hours, but it's been
and Phelan left early.
Yeah, and Phelan left early. Yeah, we'd be on 4 hours if Phelan was still here, wouldn't we? Hi, Kevin, if you're watching still. No, sorry, I'm joking. We like to joke here sometimes. Okay, we're not going to do any destinations or art stuff today because we're at the end of the show. And that, to be honest, we haven't got the panel equipped for that today. But I would like to just go around before everybody in order, so Dirk, Maria, Tara, to just if anything exciting is coming up for them. I asked them what they've been thinking last week that was exciting, because we all know what we were doing last week. Virtual world's best practices in education. See, actually, I think the long version is easier than the abbreviation. Right. So starting with Dirk, anything exciting coming up in your virtual life, should I say, or real life if you want, in the coming week or weeks?
Well, in the next couple of days, I think the most important thing is going to be actually trying to sleep some. But extending well beyond that, I'm not going to take too much of the thunder from Maria, but we're both going to be talking a bit about the upcoming OpenSim Community Conference. I'm more behind the scenes. Maria's more in front of the scenes, and I think it's going to be another good conference. I get to see one track pretty much all the way through because I'm also one of the streamers, so it's. I'll just hand that to Maria and let you run with it and whatever's coming up in your life.
All right. So first, again, I want to second what Mel said about proposals, except for the OSCC. We need your proposals to start getting ready. Start getting those things ready right now. For the business track, they don't have to be that formal. It could just be a couple of line summary. I'd like to talk about, this and this happening, in our grid or on our platform. And that's fine, That's perfectly fine. Just send it to me. Everybody knows my email address. Check in on the new website redesign. Pick up the new copy of Freeland and OpenSim. And send out new news to me, because in 2 days I'm putting out the grid statistics report. So if you have events and announcements, just make sure I get those.
Wonderful. Meta Maria.
Do you guys like that? Do you guys like that?
I do, and I like that jingle too. That's great.
That's fun.
So what's the line? I just met a Meta Maria.
I like that.
I met Maria. Yeah. I can't sing. We'll have to find somebody who can sing to do this.
We have to find someone who sings to record a jingle for me. Yes.
Yeah, whatever you do not look up Dirk McKeenan SLCC 2010 on YouTube.
What were you singing? Were you singing a Steely Dan song?
I think that was an RL song session, if I recall.
Yeah, the SLCC was actual physical thing, and I don't know if I take any ownership of that.
Right on, Dirk.
What time of night was it, and how many drops of alcohol had you had?
I'm not going to. I'll leave that open to.
What was it? SLCC 2010 stays at SLCC 2010, or you wish it had?
Unless it's on YouTube.
Yeah, right.
Unless it's on YouTube.
In which case,
what goes on YouTube
haunt you for
stays
the
in
rest of your
YouTube.
days.
But
Okay. Pedlo, if you've still got your mic on, any highlights coming up this week that you want to get in here?
Well, of course, there are Machinima coming out. Speaking of Gentle Dove, the Virtual Ability Group answered the UWA challenge to create art that reflected what how the virtual world made them or helped them find new ways to express themselves through art. And I did shoot some of that, and I'm working on that film as we speak. Actually, I've been editing it, so that'll be coming out soon. It's a real nice film. The presentations use different modalities. One person speaks in French. I'm going to find the translation. Jenel spoke for a few people, so it was nice. It was really a super exhibit. It was a real good exhibit, and it's probably still there if you want to go over to the UWA and go see it. It's very interesting and very beautiful. And other than that, no, I'm just chilling, Mel.
That is how it should be.
Yes.
We should all sit in virtual worlds and chill.
Yes. When we can, when we're not working too hard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic. Right. Okay, Tara, wrap up from you, and the same question really. Anything?
Well, I have one item that I that I missed on my opening that I wanted to bring in that is actually apropos VWBPE. The Zinnia Zauber, who is an artist in World. Her real name is actually Renee Brock Richmond, and she happens to be relatively a real-life neighbor, as when you're in rural areas, 100 miles is a neighbor. Actually, I think it's more like 60. Anyway, she alerted me to an article that appeared in the Sequim Gazette. Sequim, spelled Sequim, and most people mispronounce it if they've only seen it, is on the north end of the Olympic Peninsula, and she got a very nice write-up in that publication. The headline of which was "A Digital Me in Your World, Avatars Provide Real-World Benefits." Really nice article, and I gave her congrats on the fact that not once in that article was there any of the nod, wink, wink, oh, it's all sex in Second Life stuff. It was very well done. It did not echo. It did not just pick up bits from other people's articles. Great picture, dual picture of her in her avatar format and her real life self. And Zinnia was one of the presenters at VWBPE, and that got mentioned too. So the article ran just this last week. So it is possible to get good press. It may not be in the big time national leagues, but those small town articles make a difference over time. So way to go, Zinnia, on that. And on that note, I think the only other highlight, I can't think beyond getting my taxes done right now. So it's sort of occupying my brain time.
That's not quite what I call a highlight, but yes,
well, it is. It's a little time sink here the next day or so.
I know the feeling.
Yes.
Okay, actually, it's interesting you mentioned that because I'll get the link off you so that I can read it and Twitter it. Actually, that's something to put in the main feed. Yeah, if you, bit of self-promotion, of course, as usual. If you want to get in-world news about and links and stuff about arts and destinations and special events and stuff, follow my Twitter feed at twitter.com/malbones_writer. And if you're interested in more interfacing stuff and greater metaverse and technology and stuff, follow me at twitter.com/malbones, all one word. And Tara reminded me, so I'll leave you with this, is I'm afraid I don't have the link handy, but I'm sure some of you can root around for it. I may have Twittered it, or at least Facebooked it. Joe Yardley, who presents with Trats de Prey, their weekly podcast, which is good listening, a bit different from what we do, so complimentary in its way. I came across an article about her. It might have come via Chantel, I'm not quite sure. But she apparently lives in real life in Berlin. She runs 1920s Berlin. That is her thing. It's somewhere you've got to dress up in costume to even get in. But this was an interesting newspaper about her RO identity. Apparently, where she lives, she had, despite her technology, and knowledge and everything else, she literally lives in a house where nothing is more recent than the 1920s. Apart from the odd phone and technology thing that she needs for her work. And there were some pictures to go with it, and it was fascinating. The idea that she's based her whole real life lifestyle on living in an age where nothing is later in time than the 1920s, which brings a whole new context to every time I hear her from now on, I'll be thinking of this woman in a 1920s house stuck in time. Anyway, that's it for now. And thank you all for watching. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Oh, and I will announce this only once, but during our conversation post-broadcast during the conference, you'll be pleased to know that Ebbe Linden himself will be coming on this very show. I'm not telling you when, and I'm not even sure we'll tell you in advance, but he has agreed to appear on this show one Sunday. So, viewers, tell your friends, push our viewership up. You'll be hanging on, waiting for Ebbe. Whatever week we can arrange to be the best week. So that is that. And yeah, I've said it all really. Special thanks to Dirk McKeenan. Thank you, Dirk.
A pleasure, as always.
Maybe I hope to get you back on in the near future at some point. It's been great having you here, part of the conversation, and it seems ages since we've seen you, although we did have you on webcam once upon a time, but it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. My thanks to Phelan, who has, of course, already disappeared, but I'm sure he'd be saying, oh, bye, folks, or something or other. Thanks to our wonderful camera, Pet Love Pet Shop, who you've heard in the background. Thanks, Pet.
You're welcome. Sorry about the home and the mic and all that stuff.
I didn't notice. I don't know about the viewers, but it's another matter. And thanks, as always, to Maria, who's Maria Koroloff, or I should say, Meta Maria, who's here every week with us these days. Thank you, Maria.
And I will see you next week with an update about what's happening with the hypergrid stats.
Woot! As they say in
Good.
Because the one thing we need more on this show is more numbers.
Yeah, we certainly. Well, we need more metaverse focus. That's why you're here.
Really? Well, then my new name fits well. Meta Maria on the Metaverse Week in Review.
Indeed.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yes.
You've got it in one there. Great. I'll work on a jingle.
And I'll try to find a mesh skirt that I can wear and sit in.
They have these beautiful pantaloons that are tight at the ankles, but they balloon out, a little bit.
No, I am not a pantaloon.
Okay. I like pantaloons.
I'm a pantaloon person.
Okay, well, just a thought.
Should I change to Dirk McKeenan?
There you go.
Ooh.
Or Dirk McKeenan.
That's interesting. Pantaloons. They're out of
Meta Maria and her meta mesh makeover.
I think
if only my brain was sharper today. What, Tara?
A long mesh shirt would probably work better rather than a short. Short skirts are going to have the.
It'll be trial. It'll be trial and error. There's also the option you can come on as a tiny. You can come on as anything you want, Marie. Anything you want.
I can always wear dark pantyhose.
If you want a really fanciful,
then Mal won't be able to talk straight.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to make an interesting comment about, I think when I was about 13, the sort of age when you have your first girlfriend, so one of them wore pantaloons. They were quite experienced.
Okay, now I understand.
But it all comes down to don't use Mal's pose when you're sitting there.
Yeah. And actually, I really funny little anecdote.
It's a wrap.
No, please.
Yeah, no. There's a wonderful art project which continues constantly. So there's more avatars coming online all the while in Inworld. I think it's just called Meta Avatar. And I picked up a few of them. They're very bizarre avatars, but some of them are like mix and match things, so they're partially humanoid. And I suddenly thought, well, we'll get Meta Maria or a Meta Avatar.
A Metatar.
Metameshatar.
Meshametatar.
Somebody needs to copyright that quick. Metatar.
No, actually, the project is called Meta Bodies. That's it.
I like Metatar better.
Me too.
Somebody needs to license that fast.
Take it and run. It's yours.
Metatar.
Well, Meta
Okay.
Rhiannon says meta hello, so I'll throw that in as well.
Waves a meta wave.
Hi, Joyce. Hope to get you back shortly as well. In a week or two, maybe. Yes, you remember Joyce from a few weeks ago, Rhiannon Chat Noir. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to call it a wrap again, but I did miss out Tara, so thank you, Tara, as well,
You're welcome.
as always.